Hey everybody, happy Saturday morning. I hope your weekend is good so far. Going to be doing a live first one in a while. I guess I've been doing the doubts one with Jonathan McClatchy. I've been wanting to do more lives. I've been dealing with a little bit of some health issues, so feel free to pray for your guy. It's a whole lot easier to pump out some short videos where I just narrate something than do the lives, but I do want to do more of like the call-in kind of stuff and presentations and all that. And so anyways, thank you guys so much again for all the support. Be sure to like, subscribe if you haven't, and all of that good stuff. So today I'm inviting Mormons and Muslims to come up. I would love it if I could get like a Muslim and a Mormon on at the same time. That might be a bit of a fever dream there. I don't know if that's going to happen, but we'll see. We'll see. But first, I'm going to do, I don't know, like a 20-minute presentation. And I think this is definitive proof that both Mormonism, LDS, whatever you guys want to be called these days, and Islam are just hopelessly false, because your guys as prophets both imitate each other in doing something that no true prophet ever would do. And so I'm going to bring up a real quick slide deck here, and we're going to go through it. And so why can we safely say that both Joseph Smith and Muhammad are frauds? Some of you might have seen a video I did on this a few months ago, but we'll expand on it a little bit. And so let's talk about it. And so both of them use this thing that I would call the self-certifying strategy. This is the ultimate trust me, bro. All right. This is as bad as like writing a job reference for yourself or giving yourself like a 5-star review, or some of you crazy people in my comments liking your own comments, although nobody can see that. But anyway, here is what the self-certifying strategy is. And again, this is just proof of fraud. This is something that no true prophet would ever do. Is step one, God sends down a prophecy that a certain prophet in the future would come. Step two, over time, God allows every trace of that prophecy to disappear from the face of the earth. Everybody forgets about said prophecy, and everyone lost that bit of the Bible. Now, if you think about this, this is extremely absent-minded of God. It's like this is accusing God of being a bumbling idiot. And you'll see in a moment, this is exactly what entails in Mormonism and Islam. And then 3, God realizes that the prophecy is forgotten, so he decides to send it again. Who should he send the prophecy with? Should he send it through somebody else who can predict this particular prophet coming so people can actually verify? No, God makes the worst possible choice. He sends the prophecy to the person that the prophecy is about. Like, wow, really? Okay, bad strategy, but this is the self-certifying strategy, and we see this again in both Islam and in Mormonism. And so here are 2 big problems with the self-certifying strategy. In order to believe in the prophet, I have to believe in the prophecy. But in order to believe in the prophecy, I have to believe in the prophet. This is viciously circular, right? It's just bad reasoning. I don't think all-knowing, all-knowledgeable God, an intelligent God, is going to ask us to reason in a circle this badly, right? But it's worse than just being circular, right? It also, the problem with this idea is that we're accusing God of being a bumbling moron. And you would think that God would not be a bumbling moron, right? And so it assumes that God would allow a prophetic foretelling to be lost to future generations. And so God isn't going to preserve a very, very, very important prophetic foretelling about a future messenger to come, a very important messenger, right? Like, is God really that stupid that he's not going to preserve that? But even worse, this also would assume that God would try to salvage the situation by having the prophet re-reveal their own foretelling, right? To get this prophet to self-certify. This is really dumb, guys. Like, this is really stupid. Like, God wouldn't do that. God is not that goofy, because everybody who's going to look at this is going to go, bro, we obviously know what happened. You wrote yourself in the Bible. You're clearly a fraud, right? And so, again, this is like writing your own 5-star review, or, writing a job reference for yourself. I don't think you could go to a job interview and they ask for references and you're like, yeah, well, here you go. and they're like, look at the paper, and it's like, hey, this is you, right? Like that doesn't work. So this is precisely what Joseph Smith does, right? His coming as a prophet was foretold by a previous prophet. This prophecy was lost from all memory and all historical records. God resends the prophecy about Smith, and he sends it through Smith. Now, a lot of Mormons aren't necessarily familiar with this, and it's kind of interesting why. But this is Genesis 53. Now, if you are a part of, I'm trying to remember the other denominations, not LDS, it's the other branch of Mormonism that actually follows more as family. I want to say it's Community of Christ. Pretty positive it's Community of Christ. They actually have the copyright to the Joseph Smith translation, and so they can distribute it. The LDS Church, they could put it on their website, but they actually can't print it in their own Bibles. But if you guys don't know, Joseph Smith, because Mormons believe that the Bible is, as long as it's translated correctly, it's reliable, right? Which is basically their way of showing, throwing some shade on the text. And Joseph Smith wrote his own translation, where in a few parts in his Bible, like he inserts things. And if you guys know anything about Genesis chapter 50, it ends at verse 20. But no, the Joseph Smith translation tacks on some extra verses, including verse 33. We'll just read it. It says, and that seer I will bless, they will seek to destroy him, or those who seek that to destroy him shall be confounded. For this promise I give unto you, for I will remember you from generation to generation, and his name shall be called Joseph, and it shall be after his father, and he shall be like unto you. For the thing which the Lord shall bring forth by his hand shall bring my people unto salvation. And so here's the deal here. This is Joseph speaking, as in Joseph, the son of Jacob, right? And Joseph Smith was inspired to add these verses of Joseph in Egypt, prophesying about Joseph Smith in the future. When it says it shall be after the name of his father, what was Joseph Smith's dad's name? Joseph Smith, right? He was a junior. And so Genesis 53 claims that Joseph Smith's coming was foretold by Joseph ben Jacob by name. This prophecy appears nowhere in any historical record that we have about the words of Jesus. Every single manuscript that we have, the Bible, Genesis ends in verse 20, right, of chapter 50. So we don't have this written down. The people of Smith's day could not have gone to any independent historical source to confirm these words, right? There is no Genesis 50:33. And so the only source that we have for these words spoken by Joseph in Egypt, right, is the re-revealed words given to Smith. Oh my goodness, right? So this is the ultimate trust me, bro, like I said at the beginning, right? This is bad. This is obvious proof that it's fraud. And then we're going to have to believe here that God, having allowed Joseph's words to be lost, Joseph in Egypt, re-revealed them through the prophet Joseph Smith that they are about, right? And so at this point, if this is the first time you are hearing this, this is cringy. This is facepalm worthy. This is bad, right? But this is precisely what Joseph Smith does. So this is like proof that he's a fraud, right? Nobody is going to put in the Bible like, hey guys, this was missing. Let me put it in there. And trust me, this is a prophecy about me. I'm foretold, that's goofy, right? That's crazy. But this is precisely what Muhammad also does. Muhammad does the exact same thing. His coming as a prophet was foretold by name by a previous prophet. This prophecy was lost from all memory and all historical records. God sent the prophecy about Muhammad again, and he sent it through, drumroll please, Muhammad. All right. And so this is bad. And so Muslims, if you see Joseph Smith doing this and you're like, yeah, that's sketchy, then why do you give your prophet a pass? Why would you give your prophet a pass about this? And the verse that I'm referring to is Quran 61:6. This is the Sahih International. And mentioned when Jesus, the son of Mary, said, O children of Israel, indeed I am the messenger of Allah to you, confirming what came before me of the Torah and bringing good tidings of a messenger to come after me, whose name is Ahmad. But when he came to them with clear evidences, they said, this is obvious magic. And so, yikes. All right. Like, do we have any record of this prophecy? No, we don't have any record of this prophecy anywhere, not a shred of manuscript evidence of it for it. We don't have any of the church fathers discussing this. We don't have anything. And why would the church want to like erase all of this when they don't even know who it's about? And if it's about Jesus and he's giving this prophecy about somebody else to come, you think, okay, great, this is cool, somebody else is coming, that's exciting. But no, we don't have anything, right? We have 600 years with zero traces of any of this prophecy anywhere. So Quran 61:6 claims that Muhammad's coming was foretold by Jesus by name. Ahmad and Muhammad are essentially the same name in Arabic. This prophecy appears nowhere in any historical record that we have about the words of Jesus. It's not written down. The people of Muhammad's day could not have gone to any independent historical source for these words, right? And if you want to say, oh, well, yeah, Muhammad was in John 14 and 15 and 16, you really think that a straight reading is going to say, oh, yeah, Ahmad is coming, right? Another messenger after me. If you think that's a straightforward reading of the text, that's just wild. The only source that we have for these words spoken by Jesus is the re-revealed words given to Muhammad. God, having allowed Jesus's words to be lost, re-revealed them through the prophet, which that they are about. And so, again, this is just absolute proof of fraud. Like no prophet ever does this. Okay, none. And so, yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself in my own slides here. That's all right. I'm still kind of new to doing the live, so bear with me, guys. But yeah, no true prophet would ever say, I was foretold by God, but only I know about it. It's obvious proof of fraud, right? And so Mormons, if you'd condemn Muhammad as a false prophet for doing this, then why do you give Joseph Smith a pass, who did the exact same thing? Muslims, if you condemn Joseph Smith as a false prophet, then why do you give Muhammad a free pass? And so that's what I want to know. If you guys, any LDS people, this point, y'all can come up and we can discuss it. Same with Muslims. Let me remove the slides here. I think I got Kuze. Could you just go in the private chat and just like verify that you're a real person, or jump on camera and wave at me so I can just see that you're a real person before I let you up, just to keep trolls out and such. Just got one so far. Kuze, waiting for you, bro. See you backstage. Oop. All right. Going once. Going twice. Where you guys at? You're all in my comments. You telling me I don't know what I'm talking about all the time, that I am Jahil, and yet here I am. All right, well, person's getting kicked. All right, well, Guze, you gotta connect a mic and a cam. I can't have you come up. I'm just gonna have to kick you at this point. All right, sorry for the awkward silence, guys. Did my best to announce this ahead of time. But yeah, I figured there'd be some. Anyway, sorry, just keeping it awkward, I guess. So if you guys have any questions in the chat, heck, if you're an atheist, I don't care if you want to join the stream and you think, say, there's more evidence for Mormonism than Christianity, we could talk about that too. So any non-Christian, feel free to join at this point, since we're still waiting on some Muslims and Mormons to come up. We'll take a look at a super chat. Your channel is growing super fast. Congrats. What sparked your interest in Islam? No, that's a good question. I appreciate the super chat. And so basically what sparked my interest in Islam is I just saw a lot of Islamic like Dawa stuff online, and just a lot of arguments against the Bible. They make a lot of arguments against the Bible being reliable. And so I started to answer a few of those. And then I realized that I just wanted to know a little bit more about their beliefs than just kind of answer what they have to say against the Bible. So I just wanted to understand their own views. And I read a book by Gordon Nickel called The Gentle Answer Against Biblical Corruption or something like that. And that was extremely interesting. It's about the Islamic dilemma. And then I just looked into more of their text and more of their sources. And the more I looked into their text and the more I looked into their sources, I found, man, this is not just just it's not just like a wrong belief. Like this is dark. Like there's a lot of bad stuff here. I mean, you got wife beating, you got all kinds of other stuff with underage girls, and the more I looked at Islam, it was just like the more I felt about it, like the same way that I feel almost about Planned Parenthood. It's like this is an evil ideology. And so yeah, so that's what got me interested, and I just wanted to deal with it more. And then I just realized there's 2 billion Muslims in the world. Those are still 2 billion people who are the precious fruit of this earth, who are caught up in a harmful ideology, and it just needs to be exposed, and there could be more people out there exposing it. And so and I'm always just interested in history in general, and anything that involves theology, history. They make a lot of historical claims, and it could be traced back into history, although the history for Islam is pretty sketchy, and there's not as much to go off of as, say, with Christianity. And so, but just being interested in history, that's what got me interested. And so that was kind of a rambly answer there, but I hope that helps. And so, yeah, thank you again for the super chat there. Anybody gonna show up? All right, I'm getting some trolls in here who just want to throw insults and then just run away. So that's exciting. Let's take a look at some comments. What is the biggest flaw in Mormonism in your opinion? I would say this is one of them. The whole self-certifying strategy, writing yourself into the Bible. Again, that's obvious proof of fraud, saying, some other prophet told you guys that I was coming. And, I know those scriptures are lost, but, hundreds, thousands of years later, even they've been re-revealed to me. And so I think that's just an obvious internal check that is proof of fraud in Mormonism. I would say the other thing would probably be with the translation issues with the Book of Abraham. We know that Joseph Smith purchased this particular papyri, and when scholars actually looked at it, it was the Book of Breathings from Egypt and a funerary text that has absolutely nothing to do with him translating some sort of text, right? Like some kind of holy text, and it sure isn't about Abraham. It's not about Abraham at all. And the mental gymnastics that Mormons have to do in order to try and wiggle their way out of it. But that whole controversy just totally shows that this guy had no translating kind of powers or abilities, certainly not miraculous. And so, yeah, I would say that's the biggest flaw in Mormonism by far. So far, all I'm getting is harassment. So there's a Muhammad back here who says, your daughter will grow up to be a muta whore. Just wait. She'll be Muslim properly. Wallahi, inshallah. Well, how about this, Muhammad? Since you don't really have an argument, all you have is threats to my own family, then, dude, what the heck is wrong with you? Maybe your stupid, inbred, idiotic, brainless religion causes you to say stupid things like this. I think Muslims are better. Most of them are a lot better than you are. So real good job coming up on stage for nothing, insulting my family. Enjoy your ban. So there you go, guys. Live threats. This is what Islam does, apparently, to people. It causes them to make live threats. Muhammad, guess what, buddy? If you're still watching, I pray for you that in the name of Jesus, that the demons that are harassing and tormenting your mind and driving you to say horrible and awful things about my family and threatening me on a live, I pray that God would have mercy on you. I pray that the Holy Spirit would convict you. I pray that your eyes would be open to see Jesus, because you are on your way to hell in a hurry. And so if all you can do is threat, because your arguments have you can't best me in an argument, and like listen to me, I'm stuttering halfway through this live because it's just not something I'm used to. And that's all you got is threats. Come on, man. Like, give me a break. Jacob, I saw you back there. Are you LDS?
Yes, I am.
All right. So Jacob, what are your thoughts on this argument?
I find the whole Genesis 50 argument kind of silly, because I think it requires a lot of inconsistency from Christians, because Jesus basically retroactively wrote himself into the Old Testament.
How did you do that?
Well, he said, "Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad." Like, where's the historical evidence? Where's the manuscript evidence that Abraham ever did that?
Okay. Do you want me to show it to you?
Sure.
I can show it to you. Let me see. Genesis 22. Do you think Jesus pre-existed before Abraham?
I mean, like,
of course you do. You believe everybody pre-existed before Abraham, right? But you believe Jesus existed before Abraham.
But like, you're not going to be able to get that from the Old Testament. Like, there's not a single scholar that would show you that you'd be able to get that from the Old Testament, like exegete any passage from the Old Testament and get that from there.
What kind of scholars are we talking about? We're talking about critical scholars, conservative scholars, liberal scholars, somewhere in between. Like who are you talking about?
Critical, liberal, and I think even conservative scholars would grudgingly admit that.
I don't think that they would. Here, hold up a second. I'm looking up.
Like, even Inspiring Philosophy Mike, he says you shouldn't rely on like prophecies from the Old Testament to referring to Jesus, because they're like, they're not really referring to Jesus. They're referring to their own like immediate historical context. And so, like, I don't think that this, like, I think the whole Genesis 50, it's not a good argument for Mormonism. It's not really like the slam dunk against Mormonism. I don't really think it's a good argument you guys should be using against us. Like, because there's all sorts of instances where the New Testament uses Old Testament scriptures to write Jesus into them. It repurposes those scriptures that they weren't originally meant for those purposes. So, like,
do they anywhere say this prophecy was lost, but it's been re-revealed to us?
I mean, does Joseph claim that in that prophecy?
He's writing a prophecy that didn't exist, that we have zero manuscript evidence for.
I mean, it's implicit when Jesus says that, because I mean, we don't have that prophecy.
Okay, so there's two problems here. One is this is basically, again, in order to believe the prophecy, you have to believe in the prophet. In order to have to believe in the prophecy, did I say that backwards? In order to believe in the prophecy, you have to believe in the prophet. In order to believe in the prophet, you have to believe in the prophecy. So it's completely circular. Number two, it assumes that your God on Mormonism is being stupid, is being very negligent, because he's not preserving a prophecy that is about him. So those are two big problems, right? So where you might say, like, okay, the New Testament.
So why didn't God preserve the prophecy about Abraham seeing Jesus and rejoicing and he was glad?
That's not a prophecy, though. Jesus never says that it's a prophecy. He just says that Abraham saw my day, he rejoiced and was glad. And that's something that I think, if he's seeing himself as the angel of the Lord, the pre-existent angel of the Lord, which appeared unto Abraham multiple times, including in Genesis 22, which I can go through here, then he was there. And Abraham would have realized.
That requires some major mental gymnastics right there.
How is that mental gymnastics?
You're saying that is Jesus?
Yeah. There's a lot of people that think that, right? And so somebody was just talking about this in the chat. So I'm looking at a book, and I'm going to recommend a book to you. This is something that Michael Heiser has talked about extensively. You cannot even begin to say that Michael Heiser is not a biblical scholar. You have Matt Foreman, who wrote a book called The Angel of the Lord, a biblical, historical, and theological study. They argue for, I don't know, like 400 page or 300 pages that Jesus is the pre-existent angel of the Lord in the Old Testament. This is an argument that's just pretty much well known at this point, and more and more people believe it. And so we even see where, like I said, in Hebrews, or excuse me, Hebrews, Genesis 22. I mean, it has right here. It says the angel. Hold on, let me find it.
So that's saying he saw the
But it says
pre-existent Jehovah.
the angel of the
Saw,
Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, here am I. Do not harm the boy. The angel said, right? And then hold on a second. Then the angel is the one who actually blesses him. It says the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, I solemnly swear by my own name, decrees the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, indeed I will bless you. So he's preaching basically a gospel. And that we know that in Galatians chapter 3, Paul, who we both accept as an apostle, says that all the nations of the earth are blessed through the seed of Abraham, and Jesus is that seed of Abraham, right? And so he says it right here. And so if Jesus is the pre-existent angel of the Lord, and he's the one who's appearing, he's this second divine figure, which this is just a theme throughout all the Old Testament, as the angel of the Lord being a second divine figure apart from Yahweh, but still Yahweh. Then we already have this doctrine. We already have this in the background. It doesn't explicitly say it's Jesus, but I think like there's reasons to think that it's the second person of the Godhead, because he constantly refers himself as to the Lord and does the things that the Lord does. He forgives sins in Exodus 22, and all kinds of other stuff. So
yeah, he saw the pre-existent Jesus. But Jesus is claiming that he saw his day, like the future. There's no manuscript.
He's seeing a day that when here he is sacrificing his own son. Here he's willing to sacrifice his own son. In Hebrews 11, I believe it's 17 through 19, says that like he believed that God could resurrect him, right?
Right. As long as you impose New Testament theology onto the Old Testament, yes, you can make it work. Sure.
But you accept the Old Testament. You accept the same presuppositions that I would, right? I know that it's as it's correctly translated, but don't go all critical scholar on me, because you and I should be on the same page as far as
no, because I'm applying the same skepticism to you that you're applying to my theology. So I'm going critical scholar on you. I since you're applying the standards of an atheist to my theology, I'm basically going atheist on your theology. That's what I'm doing.
So going back to John 8, he never says this is a prophecy about me. He just says Abraham rejoiced to see my day and he was glad. So all he's implying here. Hold on. Let me finish. You gotta let me finish though. And so what I'm saying is he's saying that he foresees a day where he was willing to sacrifice his own son. He believed that he would have been resurrected. He's told by the angel of the Lord that your descendants will be greatly multiplied, and you will be a blessing, and your descendants will take possession of the stronghold of their enemies, and all this other stuff, all these blessings. So in a sense, and then we know that Paul connects Abraham into believing God and it being credited to him for righteousness, right? And so in a sense, Jesus is not lying here, because everything that he's seen is or that Abraham has heard to this point is in line with the gospel, is in line with his message. Right. And so it's not the same thing. What I'm saying is you're comparing apples to oranges. Jesus is not saying, thus, there was this prophecy about me that this other prophet said in the future, it's coming. And now here it is, but there's no record of this. I'm pointing to records of it right now. It's all throughout Genesis. The gospel is all woven into Genesis.
It requires you to impose New Testament theology onto it. It requires you to refer to some angel of the Lord that isn't Jesus.
But how is the New Testament theology wrong? Right? So if Abraham was willing to sacrifice his son, and he knew that through his seed, all the nations of the earth would be blessed, and that this seed that he was willing to kill and put on an altar would be resurrected. How is that not like similar to exactly what we see in Jesus? Like that's exactly
that seed should be the Jews.
What's that?
That he could be his chosen posterity, the Jews.
He said all nations. He said all nations.
All nations could be blessed through his posterity, the Jews.
Okay, so yeah, no, I don't think that that's right, because he's saying all nations, and it's a seed, right? And so
there's an entire religion, Judaism, that interprets that scripture completely different from you.
So if so what's one Israelite who all the nations of the earth have been blessed through, aside from Jesus?
What do you mean?
So
you don't
later
think,
this very same prophecy throughout the Old Testament.
Do you understand how an Israelite, how a Jew would understand that scripture? Like, have you talked to them?
I don't go out and talk to a lot of Jews. There's not a lot of Jews around me, but I understand.
I'm sure. The thing is, I don't know their answer. I don't know their answer to that, but I'm sure that they would have like a good answer to that.
Well,
like
if you don't know their answer to it, then why are you just throwing it out as a bare possibility?
Because I know that they would.
You know that they would, but you don't know what their argument is. So how do you know that they would?
Well, because they're pretty familiar with the Old Testament.
Okay, so what they're going to say is that the fulfillment of, like, I don't know, they don't say that the light of the nations is them, that they're the light of the nations, and that's been fulfilled, right? There's only one Israelite who has been the light of the nations, because this particular thread goes all the way into all the prophets talking about there's going to be a servant who's going to be rejected and abhorred by the nation, and yet he's going to be the light unto all nations. And yet there's not a single Israelite that we could say was rejected by his own nation, and yet was the light to all these nations. And so all of this is tied together. Like, this is still going back to Abraham and everything else. All of this flows together into one coherent message. So if you're going to go critical scholar on me, I'm going to say the critical scholar narrative doesn't work. And I'm going to go back and say Joseph Smith is more likely lying and reinventing a prophecy. And God is just not stupid. He's not going to re-reveal a prophecy. And so again, you're comparing apples with oranges, because Jesus is just giving theology at this point. He's not saying, yay, there was this prophet who said this particular thing about me, and now it's here. And
that's literally what he did. That's literally what he did. Yes, it is.
Does he name himself? Does he
name
himself? Oh, he names
my
himself.
Day. My. That's a pronoun referring to him.
My day. So he says, Abraham said that Jesus is coming. Is that what you're saying? Your
father Abraham rejoiced to see my day.
Okay.
My, a pronoun referring to me.
Did he say Joseph said that Joseph is coming and his dad is named Joseph too? Did he say, hey, Ahmad is coming? You know, like with the Muslims, right? Like, no, he doesn't name himself by name.
Now you're splitting hairs.
He's not
You're splitting hairs. You're splitting hairs. Yes, you are.
I'm referring.
You are splitting hairs.
There is no. He's not referring to any text. He's not referring to any text at all. He's not saying.
He's referring to an occurrence that there is no manuscript evidence for. There's no historical evidence for. It doesn't matter if there's no text. By the way,
bro,
Joseph is not referring to a text either. Joseph, he's not
referring to Genesis. He's saying it was in Genesis. He's quoting Genesis. How could you not see that?
This is where you're. Okay, let me go. Let me get into this. Okay, this is where your ignorance of the Joseph Smith translation comes in. So Joseph was not re-revealing a text. I'd invite you to study more about the history of the Joseph Smith translation. You're familiar with the Book of Moses, right? Our Book of Moses?
Yeah. I believe so, yeah.
That's a translation, I'm saying that in quotes, of the book of Genesis, the beginning of it. A lot of that is just like adding wholesale, completely new parts about Enoch, about Moses via revelation. It's not like adding some new part of the text. And yet he calls it a translation. Joseph was pretty loosey-goosey with the word translation. And so you don't have to think that that's like adding a new ancient text to the end of Genesis 50.
Do you think that Surah 61:6, when Muhammad says Jesus said that I'm coming and he calls me by name. You don't find anything sus with that.
I mean, not in and of itself, no.
You don't? Okay.
No, to be
So you think that that's totally fine. That could be totally legit if say there's other, reasons to think Islam is true. That's not a red flag for you at all. That doesn't raise even a little hint of skepticism for you.
No, I think retroactively putting yourself into old texts is basically they're unfalsifiable. Like, you basically have to trust like the authority of that person, and so you have to go to other claims that they have made.
So
like with Jesus, it's the resurrection. With Joseph, it's the angel and the gold plates. You have to like refer to other areas of authority that they've done.
Okay, fine. Since you're the only guy I got, Jacob, and you've been good so far, even though we've had a spirited back and forth, and I don't mind it. So there's this. This is already a red flag for me. I'm telling you this as an outsider, right? And so I see this, and then I see the whole fiasco with like Book of Abraham and him basically trying to translate a funerary text about a book of breathings that all the scholarship points the other way. I don't trust his translation skills either. And not only that, if you want to say, oh, witnesses to golden plates, and they signed affidavits and they were willing to suffer for it,
and saw an angel.
And yeah, what was the appearance of the angel like? What was it like? How long did it last? What did he say? What was he? How?
They were pretty detailed about that. If you've actually read their accounts.
Okay, where are their accounts? Give me the details.
You can read Richard Lloyd Anderson's Investigating the Book of Mormon Witnesses if you want to know more.
I want to know specifically from you what they saw, how long that it lasted, and what it was like. Did they touch him? Did they hear him? Did they eat a meal with him? Did they do any of those things?
Yeah, they heard the voice of God. They saw him holding the plates.
I'm talking about Moroni. What was the appearance with Moroni like in detail?
Like, I don't have this on the top of my head. That's why I'm referring you to the
sources. So we have the Gospels where Thomas touches or is invited to touch Jesus. We have other accounts in Luke where they touch Jesus. They eat a meal with him. They see him in the daytime. They see him multiple times. They see him over a period of 40 days. Okay.
And these are based on firsthand accounts?
Yes, definitely. Well, two of them are, yeah. John and Matthew are apostles, and I'm more than willing to go to bat for traditional authorship. And then Luke and Mark
were
companions of apostles. Why? Okay, so now you're going to go back to you put your skeptic hat on for that. But
yes. If you're going to apply those standards to my religion, I'm going to apply it to yours.
Okay, but Jacob, like, you shouldn't. You're fighting against your own scriptures at this point.
Oh no, I'm not.
Okay, so you have no details about what the appearance to Moroni was like.
No, I'm saying that not off the top. I'm saying not at the. Okay, you're saying that because I can't come up with it offhand. That I'm referring you to the historical sources. You can read them for yourself.
Okay. I've looked for these historical sources. If you can,
you haven't looked very well then.
Okay, well, you don't even know what you're talking about. You're just like, I think they say this. I don't know for sure. So that doesn't work, bro. Like that's not very convincing. Like, well, you're just trusting me, bro.
They heard his voice. They heard the voice of God. I told you that. They heard his voice. They saw the voice of God. They described his appearance. I told you that.
Okay, what was the appearance like? How long did it last? Right.
He was wearing a white robe. He showed them.
He was wearing a white robe. Okay, I need citations. I need some actual evidence, right? I need you.
I gave you a citation. I gave you a book.
Okay, you gave me a book that you apparently haven't even read.
I've read it several times.
Okay, well, but you don't know. You can't even recall anything about it. So
I've given you like 5 details, dude.
Those are not details from anything. I need you to.
He was wearing a robe. He had a table. He
was wearing the robe. Okay.
He was wearing a robe. He had like a table with like 5 different artifacts on him. They heard the voice of God.
Right, sure. And so this is from a person who translated a fake thing that had nothing to do with whatever. They supposedly saw some plates that they cannot even translate themselves.
Now you're gish galloping.
Now I'm gish galloping, bro.
So you're moving from one subject to the other. Like,
you're the one who is coming up and you're saying, okay, I don't have any evidence for what the claims that I'm really making here. I have a book, I kind of remember, but I'm not really sure. I don't have any idea if you're making some of this stuff up on the spot. You're perfectly okay with your God using completely circular reasoning, and you're perfectly okay with him not preserving a text that doesn't have any sort of evidence that can't evidence some sort of prophecy. This is wild, man. Thanks
Well,
for coming.
I think
Thanks. Yeah.
no, I think I've
All
done a
right.
good job at exposing your double standard here, and I think everyone has seen that pretty well.
Oh, yeah, they've seen that pretty well. And so, all right, man. Well, I'll let them be the judge, bro. I think the whole you're comparing apples with oranges, bro. So thanks for coming.
Right? Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, there you go. So, guys, I mean, seriously, where is Jesus in John chapter 8? Let's just look at it, right? Let's just look at it. John chapter 8. All right. He's talking about his preexistence here, and he says, let's start in both Abraham and the prophets died, and yet you say, if anyone obeys my teaching, he will never experience death. You aren't greater than your father Abraham who died, are you? And the prophets died too. Who do you claim to be? If I glorify myself, my glory is worthless. The one who glorifies me is my Father, about whom you people say he is our God. Yet you do not know him, but I know him. If I were to say that I do not know him, I would be a liar like you, but I do know him. I obey his teaching. Your father, Abraham, was overjoyed to see my day. He saw it and was glad. Then the Judeans replied, you are not yet 50 years old, yet you have said, Abraham, and I tell you the solemn truth, before Abraham came into existence, I am. And they picked up the stones to throw him. And so, where is Jesus saying, okay, Abraham prophesied specifically about me. He called me by name. Jesus is coming and he's going to be, this important messenger, anything else like that. He doesn't, right? And I think, again, with the theology that we see in Genesis and all throughout God's dealings with Abraham, that he believes that some sort of redeemer is coming, right? And so this is a theme throughout Genesis 3 with the fall of the garden, and that there's going to be a seed who's going to come and he's going to crush the head of the serpent, right? And then God selects Abraham out of that, and he's like, I'm going to bless you and your seed is going to be a blessing to all nations, right? And they're going to be numerous. They're going to be so numerous that you can't even count them. So Jesus is taking that theology and he's saying, hey, I am the seed of Abraham. And through me, all the nations of the earth are going to be blessed and there's going to be multiplied. And guess what? There are billions and billions of Christians running around right now. And so this is what he's referring to. This is not a specific prophecy. And then going back and trying to say, oh, okay, like, yeah, Joseph Smith adding verses to Genesis chapter 50, that's not the same thing. And then having no problem when Muhammad does the same thing, like, oh, I guess that could be fine. No, that's not how prophecy works, right? Jesus doesn't just refer to this, right? He refers himself through Isaiah 53. He mentions that he's the one that's going to be numbered with the transgressors. When he's on the cross, he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me? He's specifically alluding to Psalm 22 so that those who are the onlookers would know, hey, I'm quoting this psalm because this psalm refers to me. That's actually in the Talmud, and that when you quote a psalm at the beginning verse, you're invoking the rest of that particular psalm, right? And so he's referring that to himself. He refers to himself as the one in Zechariah who comes riding lowly on a donkey. He's referring to past prophets over and over and over and over and over again as I'm the one who's coming, right? That people could actually verify in their scriptures. So the fact that you can't see that there's a difference and trying to say, oh, there's a double standard. Yeah, I don't know. Then that's what we get. So, do you speak openly about your denomination? I am Pentecostal. So I'm sorry to disappoint some of you people who think I'm Orthodox or Catholic. I'm Pentecostal. Basically, my church has the same statement of faith as the Assemblies of God. Basically, even it's just non-denominational. And so, I did grow up in the Catholic Church, and I just was an agnostic and then like an atheist for a while before I came back to Christ, and that's where I just ultimately land and have been for a long time. So let's see. Quran 21185725 say Muhammad did miracles. Well, bro, if you want to talk about Muhammad doing miracles, you're welcome to join. But over and over and over, he says, I'm just a warner. So if you're going to throw those verses at me, Surah, I think it's 13:7, 10:21, 17:59, over and over and over. Muhammad says, I don't do miracles, guys. Signs are only with God, right? And even if this did say Muhammad did miracles, okay, what miracles? Specifically, what miracles? Okay, the Gospels at least report like what Jesus did. And we have historical reasons to believe that the Gospels are rooted in eyewitness testimony. The Quran doesn't say anything about Muhammad's miracles at all. There's nothing that we can appeal to. The only thing that we get are later hadiths that were compiled 200 years later, hundreds, sometimes 1,000 miles away. So I am going to be doing a stream in the future if Muhammad split the moon. So if y'all want to argue who did miracles, Paul or Muhammad or something like that, we could do that in the future. Amiibo doctor, get him testify. All right. The angel of the Lord can't be Jesus. Angel Michael can't be Jesus. I never said that he was. That he was Michael. I do think the angel of the Lord is, but I'm not going to get into all of that now. I just think there's multiple reasons to think that. That he is the pre-incarnate Christ, and just refer to the book that I mentioned there. If you look at the first vision testimonies of Joseph, it obviously changes over time. I.e., Joseph lied. Yeah, right. And so, right, Smith marries. He could have been friends with Diddy. Well, yeah. There's just a lot of inconsistencies with the testimonies. Again, the guy wanted to appeal to, well, they saw the angel Moroni, and this is what it's like. And it's like, okay, well, give me sources, right? Give me the sources. If you can't produce the sources and you just kind of like vaguely allude to them, that doesn't really give me much of anything. There's plenty of reasons to think that they were primed for this particular experience. And right, like we don't have anything in detail. And again, saying affidavits and golden plates, so what? That doesn't tell me anything about what is actually contained in those golden plates. So thank you, Nick, for the super chat. What are your thoughts on those who pray to Allah and have their prayers answered? If you argue their religion is false, how do you account for their answered prayers? As far as I know, bro, Muslims, when they pray, they don't often they just recite the same prayer repeatedly. I know that they can, at the end of it, maybe say something, but what kind of prayers are we talking about being answered? You're going to have to give me specifics. Without the specifics, there's nothing I can answer here about whether their prayers are answered, because I don't know what it just depends on the details on whether or not something would be considered miraculous or not. And it all comes back to details. And so I wouldn't use answered Christian prayer as evidence for my religion unless it was something like very much miraculous, like miraculous healing or something like that, that would not happen, just with doctor's assistance or the assistance of nature. It would be something that would have to be completely miraculous. And I've not seen anything in Islam that even approximates to that. Any Ryokan, any plans for a Discord server? Again, thank you guys for all the super chats. No, I'm never doing a Discord server. I don't like them. I just, it's too much work. I don't really, I have enough distractions as it is with just doing YouTube and keeping up with comments and everything else like that. And so that is nearly impossible. And so, yes, Quran is not a biography like the Gospels. True, but you would think that if it's recording the teachings of Muhammad, it would actually like talk about some of the miracles, mention them specifically, especially when he talks about specific miracles that happened in the Old Testament and things like that, where he talks about like actual details of those miracles that happened. And yet Muhammad, the guy, there's no details about his miracles whatsoever. This is a good question, Koopa. Very good question. I appreciate the super chat. Thank you for that. And so, actually, I don't use the appearance to the 500 in First Corinthians 15. And I don't use even First Corinthians 15 to make an argument for the resurrection at all. And this is where I would differ from a lot of people who take more of a minimal approach, because First Corinthians 15 is just a creed that Paul gives in passing. At best, it gives us evidence that the early church believed in the resurrection. But it doesn't give us any details of what the particular details of the testimony actually were. And so, without details of their actual testimony, we don't have any way to know that they're rational, right? And so, with the Mormon angel appearances, if we don't have details of the appearance in order to know that they're rational and not just imagining something, then we don't have much to go on. And it's really, I'm going to apply the same standard to Christianity. But we don't have just First Corinthians 15. We have the four Gospels, and I'm going to argue that the Gospels go back to eyewitness testimony, that they're written by people who are close up to the facts, knowledgeable, and are habitually truthful. And if that's the case, then what they say goes back to what the original eyewitnesses said. And if what they say goes back to the original eyewitnesses, then they made these claims, and they made these claims in a situation where they would be persecuted for them, right? And so the content of their claims makes it difficult to imagine that they were mistaken. And it's the content of their claims that makes us think that they weren't lying. So this would separate me from somebody like, say, Dr. Mike Licona, who really just kind of says that he literally says this, that you can do it all through Paul. You cannot prove the resurrection all through Paul. This might be me going against the grain, but without the details of testimony, we have an undetailed report. And without the details, we have no way of knowing that they were rational or not. So if you want to use 1 Corinthians 15 for saying it's early belief and it originated with the Jerusalem apostles, I guess that helps some, but I'm going to lean very heavily on the Gospels. And so thank you for the super chat. It's an excellent question. And so, yeah, that's what would separate that from me, as well as like other things, like some Marian apparitions, not all. Some Marian apparitions are very, very detailed. But yeah, that's my standard, is you can't just have an undetailed report and expect us to know if they're rational, right? Hakeem again, in the case of having their life saved, again, I need specifics. I appreciate the super chat. And so I would need specifics. How is their life saved, right? And so without the specifics, I don't know. Face to face. Threw myself off the screen there for a second. Anybody going once, going twice? No? Please show Mormon infographics, Braden Rogers. All right, there's somebody. Here we go. Braden, are you a Mormon?
I'm
or
not.
Muslim? Are you
Nope.
Muslim? Are you Muslim?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay. So this is Mormons or Muslims only, buddy. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
No worries, man. No worries. No worries. No worries. No worries. Let's see. Mormon infographics, Joseph's first vision. I'll check it out real quick. Oh, look at this. Conflicting accounts. I'll show it. There's a really good book by Rob Bowman called Jesus's Appearances and versus Paul or something. Let me look it up real quick. Yeah, Jesus's resurrection and Joseph's visions. People really want to like get a breakdown of the differences between the supposed appearances to Smith and the 3 and the 11 versus the appearances in the Gospels. It's a pretty good book. I don't agree with everything on Bowman because he does take kind of a Lyconian approach, if you will. But yeah, so yeah, there are some conflicts with the accounts of the visions. I'd have to look more into this. Um, I I know even with like the resurrection accounts, there are differences. Some differences. I think there are differences that are pretty easily harmonizable, and so I don't want to like just jump to a conclusion by looking at an infographic or anything else like that. Um, so I'd have to know like what these details are and how they fit. I mean, some of these look pretty bad. Like there is a host of angels, there's not a host of angels. God the Father doesn't appear, but Jesus does, but then he doesn't. Instead, it's an angelic being. And so yeah, there are some differences there. I'd have to look more into this in order to give it credence. But check out Bowman's book, it is really good. And I'll have to look into this website. So thank you, Nick, for the super chat and for giving me some reading material there. And so sure to like the stream, guys. I'll hang out for a few more minutes. There's no Muslims, no Mormons who are willing to come up and defend their prophet. Just got one so far. So yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Check the super chats one more time here. I think we've gone through them all. Thank you guys for all the support. Sorry for the awkward silence. Maybe I need to do like the whole music like Avery does, you know. But yeah, hopefully these will pick up more callers. We've had a lot for the doubts, so I'll set you guys up. I'll let you guys know a little bit about something that we do. We have been doing monthly. Me and Jonathan McClatchy have been doing talk about doubt streams. Where basically, if you are a Christian and you have doubts about your faith, questions about your faith, maybe just kind of niggling concerns, things that bother you, maybe things you've even heard online. We've been going through showing why we believe that the evidence for Christianity is just overwhelming. There's a very strong positive case that can be made. And yeah, we've just been going through that live, answering questions and all that other stuff, for providing the evidence, and it's been really good. We've had a lot of good feedback and an influx of people. It's also a service that we do not just live, like on a live stream, but it's something that you could do privately, like either a one-on-one or two-on-one conversation. We talk to people all over the globe and about all kinds of different questions. We have all kinds of people helping with that. Let me actually pull up the website, because we have people from all kinds of backgrounds that help with that. And here, let me share it real quick. Let's see. So we have Tim McGrew, philosopher, Western Michigan. He can talk on pretty much any subject: historical apologetics, reliability of the New Testament, existence of God, all that other stuff. We have Doug Groothuis, Jonathan McClatchy. We have Wesley Huff, Dr. Luke Barnes, who is an astrophysicist. So he could talk about intelligent design, the fine-tuning argument. Dr. Max Baker Heitch is really good in like the problem of evil and all kinds of other stuff. Dr. Stephen Boyce, excellent New Testament scholar. So lots of people. Be sure to take advantage. This is a super helpful resource. I've been on a lot of these calls, and it's always awesome to see the lights turn on for some people as they see the evidence for Christianity. And so we're definitely going to be doing more of that. Dr. Braxton Hunter, I'm sure some of you have seen him. Melvin, welcome to the show, bro. Are you a Muslim or Mormon?
Yeah, I'm Muslim. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, man. So did you see the earlier presentation?
Not really. Someone invited me here, and he's asking me, like, you're talking about Muslims and all, like, you should participate in this conversation. So I was like, okay, let's have a look. And I'm here to talk about, like, all these stuff. Like, I want to talk about everything that you want to talk about here. I mean, I just want to know what's the actual topic here. I'm not
Okay.
sure. He just because he told me that there's no Muslims, so I was like, okay, let's have a look, and I want to understand more of the topic and all those things, and then
Sure.
maybe we could.
I can give you the short version. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, what I'm inviting here up is Mormons and Muslims, and why I believe that both prophets, alleged prophets, make a big mistake. Right. They use something called the self-certifying strategy. Right. And so basically, I'm just going to give you the first couple slides, and then I'll jump to the passage in the Quran that I'm
yeah.
So God sends down a prophecy that a certain prophet would come, right? This is over time, God allows every trace of that prophecy to disappear from the face of the earth. Everyone forgets. Everyone does not have that bit of the Bible. This would mean that God is very absent-minded because he's not preserving a very important prophecy. God realizes that the prophecy is forgotten, and so he sends the prophecy again. Who does he send the prophecy with? He sends it through the worst possible choice. He sends that to the very prophet that the prophecy is about. And so that's circular, because in order to believe in the prophecy, I have to believe in the prophet. But in order to believe in the prophet, I have to believe in the prophecy. And it's worse than that, because it assumes that God is an idiot, right? He would, first of all, preserve that particular prophecy about that important prophet so that people could actually test the claim. Second of all, he wouldn't salvage the situation by re-revealing their own foretelling. Smith does this in Genesis 50:33. He basically has Joseph, who you guys revere as a prophet, in Egypt, basically saying that there's another Joseph that's coming, whose father is also named Joseph, and he's going to be this prophet and bring people salvation, right? And so Genesis 50, every manuscript that we have, Genesis 50 ends at verse 20. He tacks on multiple verses, including verse 33. Now, what I'm saying here is, if you guys think that's sketchy, well, Muhammad does the exact same thing in Surah 61:6. He basically has Jesus saying, there is another messenger coming who came before me of the Torah and bringing good news of a messenger to come after me, whose name is Ahmad, who's referring to Muhammad. So he's rewriting Jesus, saying that he's having Jesus say, there's this other prophet coming after me, whose name is Ahmad. But like, we have zero historical trace of this particular prophecy for 500 years. There's nobody talking about it. There's not a shred of manuscript evidence for it. No church fathers are talking about it. Heretics aren't talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. And so God doesn't preserve this prophecy, and he re-reveals it, by all appearances, to Muhammad, which this is the self-certifying strategy. No true prophet would ever do this. That's the argument. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, that makes sense. Let me have that, like, what that surah is, like surah at Saf, right?
Yeah, 61:6.
Okay, just hold it. Let me read it. And mention, when Jesus, the son of Mary, said, O children of Israel, indeed I am the messenger of Allah to you, confirming what came before me of the Torah, and bringing good tidings of a messenger to come after me, whose name is Ahmad. But when he came to them with clear evidence, they said, this is obvious magic. So you're referring here, like, Ahmad, like someone's name Ahmad's gonna come in, right? That's what you mean.
Right, and which is another name for Muhammad, and everybody believes that he's talking about Muhammad here.
Yeah, it's not exactly like Ahmed, right? That's what you mean.
It's not exactly, but it's basically, we all know by reading this verse that it's referring to the messenger of Islam.
Okay, do you know the...
By name.
Sorry?
And basically by name.
Okay, by name. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, that's an issue for you here. And what was the other one?
That's it. That's the only verse. There's 157, but it doesn't mention it by name. But what I'm saying is Joseph Smith, who you as a Muslim, and I believe rightly, would reject him as a false prophet. This is one clear evidence that Smith is a fraud. But yet Muhammad does the exact same thing. So you either have to give Smith a pass for this and say, well, that's perfectly okay. There's just other reasons to think that he's a false prophet. But it's okay when Muhammad does it. And again, we have no record of this prophecy anywhere for 500 years. No manuscript, nobody talking about it, not preserved anywhere in order for us to verify. And so normally when you have a prophecy, it's said by somebody else, and the people can actually go back to the book and verify this prophecy. But there is no book that they can go back to verify this prophecy. You just have a trust me, bro. Jesus really said that I'm coming. There's this prophecy, and God re-revealed it to me.
Here's another thing. Yeah, it's written that his name is Ahmed, but it's translated, right? So do you think this English, is the original word, like the origin word of God? Do you think like that?
So if you're gonna appeal to, well, you don't speak Arabic, and so therefore you can't really understand it. Oh, you don't either? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, we're trusting Muslim scholars who speak Arabic to translate this correctly. And so I don't think that this is every single English translation of this verse reads almost the exact same. And so it's like, you know, what do you want me to do? It's obviously referring to they whose name is, so it's referring to somebody by name. So like, who is bro, you know? He's obviously referring to himself. And so what this requires for us to believe is that God is basically asking us to use circular reasoning, which all-knowing, all-intelligent God is not going to do. And again, this is kind of silly. Like, I don't come to like a job interview and they ask me for a job reference and I go, yeah, I have a reference. It's me. You know, I don't write 5-star reviews for my own business, right? That's goofy. That's like, we know that that's not something that normal people do. It's even worse when somebody's like, yes, I'm the prophet foretold by the scriptures that don't exist, that you don't have any way of checking, but you got to trust me. Jesus really did say this about me. Do you see the problem?
I see. Okay.
So does that bother you at all as a Muslim?
No.
Why wouldn't it bother you?
I'm reading a verse in the Quran. There might be like some context like on that.
You can look at the context. You're definitely welcome to do that. I appreciate you looking at the context. But
yeah,
the verse is very, very, very straightforward. Jesus says, well, children of Israel, I am a messenger of Allah to you, confirming what came before me of the Torah. So he's saying he's confirming the Torah. And then I'm also bringing good tidings. Well, what he's basically saying, this is my good tidings. This is my gospel. This is my message.
Good news. You mean like a good news?
Yeah, I'm bringing good tidings. I'm bringing good news. I'm bringing gospel. That gospel is a messenger to come after me, whose name is Ahmad. But where is that written? We don't have that. I don't have any way to confirm that. Like when Jesus says, hey guys, there are certain prophecies about me, right? He rides into Jerusalem and says like, hey, Zechariah said that the king is going to come and ride into Jerusalem on a colt. Whatever you think of that. Okay. I'm not going to split hairs, change the subject, and get on what you think about that prophecy as a fulfilled prophecy. I'm I'm using this as an example, so don't get too hung up on it. At least I can go back. Really. At least I can go back to Zechariah and go, yeah, Zechariah, the prophet, who we have written down here. I have this source, and I can look it up to me. When Jesus gets up in the synagogue and says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me; He has anointed me to preach deliverance to the captives, and set at liberty those that are bruised, and open the eyes of the blind." And then he actually does open the eyes of the blind and does do miracles and things like that. At least I can go back to Isaiah 61 and go, oh, okay, Prophet Isaiah actually said these specific words. So, but Jesus never goes, hey guys, I am in these scriptures that are lost, but just trust me, God revealed them to me. If we think Joseph Smith is sketchy for doing that, then why does Muhammad pull the very same sketchy tactic?
Yeah. That's true. He could have been like really obvious with that. Like, if Muhammad is the one, the final messenger, he could have say Muhammad, like literally that one. But
Right, but I think everybody realizes that Ahmad and Muhammad are the same. It's basically the same. It's the same name, right? I mean, who else is Ahmad? Are you saying there's another Ahmad that we're still waiting on? Right, it's Muhammad, right?
Yeah, it's Muhammad. He was the final messenger of God. And about the Ahmad, that one, I found a source somewhere. It says in Arabic, like mostly like Muhammad is like Ahmed and Muhammad. Muhammad is like a more like a name that people would use, like comfortable using instead of Ahmed. So his name was like Ahmed before, and some people like call him in a way like Muhammad. Muhammad, like, it's like they thought, okay, Ahmed is like a short form or something like that or something, and then they said, okay, this guy is Ahmed. Okay, people like some of his Sahabas, like, I don't know if you know what Sahaba means. They didn't know his full names and all those things, but he told them, like, call him Muhammad. But he said, we don't know about his past and all those, like, we know his life story and everything. And as a like a not recent, like it's been like 6 months I've been reverted to Islam. I'm still like finding the truth and everything. And
so if you don't mind me interjecting real quick, I'll let you finish.
Yeah, sure.
But you reverted from what? Like, what were you before? Were you Christian?
Atheist. No,
Atheist.
Okay. I didn't believe. Here's my thing. Okay, just I'm gonna be clear to you.
Sure.
So my thought was, if I grew up in a Christian family, okay, or maybe in a Buddhist family or Hinduism, even though I know, like, I don't know nothing about the religion or anything, the God. If I grew up in a Hinduism, I'm obviously going to believe that religion, right? Because my parents, my society and everything, they're going to force me to believe in that. And they're going to create that sort of like a belief in me. And it's like, I don't know what's going on. And I'm just going to follow them because that's how I built up. That's how they programmed me.
Okay.
And the fact that I was thinking to myself, like, okay, what if I would be in a Christian family? I would be a Christian, right? And it doesn't matter what family I grew up, what like society I grew up, I'm going to follow them. So I thought, okay, let's get out of this. Okay, I'm going to find the truth, one truth, because there going to be only one truth, right? There's not going to be like multiple truth, like there's this God and that God and that God. There's going to be only one creator, and I believe in that. And I kind of feel like, okay, let's get out of this. I'm not going to follow my ancestors, my dad, my grandparents, and all those. Maybe they made mistake. I don't want to make mistake. Like, I want to find the truth. They're telling me to stay in a lifestyle that I surely I enjoy and all. I don't care, but I became an atheist because I don't trust in God because it doesn't make sense. Because whatever it's like a force to me, you know, like they're forcing me to believe something which it doesn't make sense to me. So I was like finding religion, like Hinduism, like I'm not Hindu, by the way, I'm just atheist. I didn't believe in anything. So I was literally finding a lot of them like reading Bibles and all those things, and looking at podcasts. And then I found out that something makes sense, and that is like one God, and that is from like Bible and Islam. I mean, like Christianity and Islam.
Sure.
I found like there is only one God. But in the Christianity, what God is like is it's a Trinity. So Trinity means like 3 in 1, and that like clicked my mind or something, like, okay, 3 in 1. Okay, that may be possible because God is like God. He can do anything, right? He could be a person. He could be anything. I was like, yeah, could be. Christianity is the truth. I didn't know about Islam because I thought Islam is like a brown, stinky people's religion. I don't want to be racist here, by the way. Okay. So that's the belief. Okay, that's a belief I had before. Like, I didn't know.
Sure.
So a lot of like propagandas and all those, like that's what I used to believe. I didn't know like Islam had a like Jesus Christ in it and all those. And then I was like, oh, okay, All right. And then the more I researched on Islam, the more I came to know it's similar to Bible. So I was like thinking again, like it could be wrong because they might copy Bible and they made their own version of story or something like that. I don't know. I still don't believe that. That could be something. And then suddenly, what I found is that Jesus. Okay, one thing that shocked me a lot. Okay. Nowadays, the recent Bible. Okay, if you see it, recent Bible. Those are written in English, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and before it was like in Hebrew or Greek. I don't know what was that. Like maybe Greek, right?
The New Testament is Greek.
Okay, yeah. And before that, what was the origin language of like Jesus? Like at that time, I just wanted to know that.
Jesus spoke Greek and Aramaic and probably Hebrew. He spoke multiple languages.
He spoke multiple languages, but I found like Jesus' language was Aramaic. That's the one.
No, that's a misconception.
The Greek came after Jesus because Greek, like I don't know, they say Greek came after Jesus.
Jesus was in a highly Greek speaking area. This is I
really?
can show you. Yeah.
All right.
Here, hold on a second.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a really common objection, but it's not a very good one. And so here, let me show you something here. Give me just a second.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So this is an article. I'm just gonna refer to it a little bit here. So one second. This is by a scholar named Peter J. Williams, who is a biblical scholar. And so we do see occasions where Jesus' words are given in Aramaic, like especially when he's on the cross, when he tells the little girl to arise in Mark chapter 5, in different parts like that, right? But Jesus, if you look right here, it says he was a carpenter, according to what we know in Matthew, or at least Joseph was a carpenter. And Nazareth was a few miles from Sepphoris. So you could imagine a carpenter getting work, not just in Nazareth, which is just a tiny town, but doing work all throughout the region. And in Sepphoris, which is just 4 miles away from Nazareth, there was a lot of people that spoke Greek. Matthew even refers to, in Matthew chapter 4, of Jesus going to Galilee of the Gentiles, right? Well, what language do the Gentiles speak? They speak Greek, right? Philip, I'll look at the article some, but I'll just go off of some memory here. Andrew and Philip are literally Greek names, right? In John chapter 20, in verse 20 through 21, I'll pull that up real quick here. There were some Greek speakers who come to Jesus and say, hey, we want to speak with Jesus. For some reason, this Bible Gateway is not coming up for me.
Yeah, take your time. No worries.
Yeah, no problem. I just want to show it to you. I could rush through it and just say, hey, trust me, bro.
No. I don't believe those trust me sources, to be honest.
Yeah, I want to give you actual sources here.
I'm looking for the truth. Okay, I'm a person who really wants to follow the truth. I'm not like those BS like they're following this and that. They're so kind, so nice. So I'm gonna follow this. No, I don't trust any people nowadays in this generation.
Sure.
So yeah.
So it says here in John 12:20 through 21. It says, now some Greeks were up among those who gone up to worship at the feast. So those approached Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and said, Sir, we would wish to see Jesus. And so why are Greek speakers like wanting to speak to Jesus? What were they hoping to accomplish if Jesus didn't speak Greek? Again, Andrew and Philip themselves are Greek names. So go ahead.
Yeah. So the thing is, what I found that the New Testament is written in Greek, right? The scholar generally agree that Jesus primarily spoke Aramaic. But he also likely understood the Greek somehow, like when people talk, because he understands all the languages that people, because he has the miracle.
Well,
he can understand.
I don't know. This isn't a miraculous thing. This isn't just Jesus is God, therefore Jesus can speak Greek. I'm not I wouldn't say that. That would be begging the question.
Yeah, that's
What I
not
am
clear here, but we
what
know.
I'm-
But I know. I read a lot of like sources there. Like even like when I search on like I don't trust Google either. But what was the link that you opened that?
This is by the one that I have up right now is by Peter J. Williams, and basically what he argues is that if you actually look at the structure of the Beatitudes in and just the Greek in Matthew 5 verse 7, he basically it's structured in a way where it would be more natural. It would more naturally flow in Greek. Okay. So there's the way that he's actually speaking that he's talking about. There's the fact that he has disciples who have Greek names. There's the fact that there are Greek speakers in John that actually come to him and say, hey, we want to see Jesus. There is another time in John chapter 7 where he says, I'm going away. And they're like, where's he going? Is he going to the Gentiles? Is he going to the Greeks? They actually literally use the word Greeks. So they assume that he could communicate with them. And then also you have in Acts chapter 6, you have in the early church in Jerusalem, you have a dispute. It says, and now in those days when the disciples were growing in number, a complaint arose on the part of the Greek-speaking Jews against the native Hebraic Jews because their widows were being overlooked in the daily distribution of food. And so at this point, they assign deacons to take care of this business. The apostles do. And so here in Jerusalem itself, you have Greek speakers who are Christians who are being, there's this dispute about the distribution of food and there's all this other stuff. And so you have it all throughout. Like I said, you have mentioned John multiple times. You have the way that Jesus teaches on the Sermon on the Mount. And then you also have in Acts chapter 6, where there are Greek-speaking early Christians. Right here it says Greek-speaking Jews in the early church. And so for this reason and many reasons, there are many scholars who believe that Jesus actually spoke multiple languages. Think of like Canada. Like there's certain areas where
he would.
They speak
Here's
French
Jesus
and they also
Christ.
speak English. Yeah.
Firstly, here's Jesus Christ. He is like one of the greatest human being I know. And yeah, that's obviously his key. He can speak multiple things. And if you go back, I'll show you something. If you go back, there was some article talking about the Greek. Let me show you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the other thing too is when they escaped to Egypt. Well, obviously Joseph and Mary, when they went to Egypt to escape Herod, they were in a place where people would have been speaking Greek as well, and so he would have needed to communicate. So Jesus' own father, very likely, or adopted father, whatever you want to call it, would have been able to speak Greek. So again, this is a really core objection that Muslims make. It's like also you have Jesus speaking in Arabic.
But
Come on, if Muhammad has Jesus speaking Arabic,
no, Jesus never spoke Arabic. Let me tell you, right? So no BS.
I'm not saying that
Jesus,
he did. I'm saying that the Quran portrays him.
Jesus spoke Aramaic as his main everyday language, but common language of Jewish people, like the common language of the Jewish people in a Galilee at the time. Okay, Aramaic was the common one, like really common, and then like gradually he started to speak in Greek and all, and then to teach other people. And why Greek is the most used language in Bible is because they need to reach, they need to reach the people around the world, because most of the people they used to speak Greek.
Yeah,
and that's the reason they. Yeah,
I'm just saying this doesn't seem to be a real objection to you then, and so.
No. What my concern is, Jesus spoke Aramaic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he spoke Aramaic. And then I'm telling you why I got shocked, and I had to go in Islamic way because it made much more sense to me. And if you could actually tell me the reason, then maybe I could think about it. But here's the thing. So he spoke Aramaic as main, and he prayed. He always prayed on the ground to his father, and
always
he bowed down. Yeah, in the Bible, and bowed down, and always, and he praised his God, and it's written in English in the Bible. Like he praised his God and all when he bowed and all, and then God. I was like, okay, if Jesus English is not his word, what did he call his God in Aramaic? I wanted to find out. Okay, that's what I wanted to find out. So what I want to Google and type atur.com. If you know what atur is like Aramaic version.
Are you going to tell
dictionary
me that
and all.
Jesus called God Allah, and so therefore?
No,
he's
not
Muslim?
only that one. No,
Okay.
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I'm not saying that.
I'll let you
There's
finish,
so
I'm
many
sorry.
things.
Just
Yeah,
checking,
you
just
can
checking.
you can explain it to me. Yeah. So he called us, and when I typed God in Aramaic, it's like two things came in, which is like Allah is a thing, and Elohim, which is close to Allah. And then Aramaic actually later on converted into Arabic, like transformed into Arabic. And then in Arabic, it's like Allah, the God. So I was like, okay, Islam says there is only one creator you need to worship, you need to pray for, and there's no other things like other than God. There's nothing else. There's only one God, and in the Bible, Jesus also praised to one God. And I was like, okay, why would he do that to himself? Like he's praising himself. Maybe he's showing his people how to do that.
No, yeah. So
Yeah.
let me just say this. First of all, going back to the argument that I originally raised, right? If Muhammad, if your God Allah is losing prophecies about your prophet, and then he's supposedly re-revealing these prophecies to Muhammad and saying, yeah, Jesus really did foretell my coming, guys, just trust me, even though you have no way of verifying this, that's a problem. And so at this point, if you think that that's irrational, that should be a reason for you to at least downgrade your trust in Islam. You can't just go, well, Jesus prayed, but I guess he's God, and I don't understand quite how that works, therefore Islam. Like that doesn't even make sense, right? That doesn't logically follow. It's not like Trinity false or incarnation false, therefore Islam true. Like that doesn't work at all. There's a huge internal problem with that. I mean, if that's difficult for you, then you would be better off. It would make more sense to be like a Unitarian or a general theist or something like that. And so this is like, there's too many problems with the Quran. You don't want to reason, Trinity is kind of confusing. So therefore
Quran answered most of my questions. And also like, I was like I was a bit jealous of like Jesus Christ in a way, because he's a man and he's white guy with a blonde hair. And
wait, what?
Why?
Okay, so no, he's from the area of Israel. He's probably got olive skin. We don't know. We don't care.
Yeah.
So
then why those people like portray Jesus as a blonde guy with a white skin?
What does that have to do with? What does that have to do with anything? Like seriously.
It's like, why a man? Like why it's not a woman then? If God wants
to.
So
Japan depicts Jesus as a Japanese person. Ethiopia predicts Jesus as you see iconography of Jesus being portrayed as a black person. What does that have to do with the truth of whether or not Christianity is true or not? The argument that I'm giving you is an internal check, right? No true prophet is going to say, I was the foretold prophet in the lost scriptures. Like that's not what a true prophet will do. And so you're going to have to tell me why that's not a problem for your particular religion. And it can't just be, there's other things like Jesus is depicted in Christian art as being a white guy, like you got to do better than that. I can give you evidence. I can give you evidence for why I think Christianity is true.
Sure.
That's fine.
Go ahead. I'm here. I'm all ears. I'm all ears.
Right. Well, I don't. So if Islam is true, you don't believe Jesus was crucified, is that correct? Or resurrected, right? That it was only made to appear.
Jesus was resurrected. Yeah, he was he was ascended like to the sky or something.
Okay,
and he's gonna come down. He's gonna come again. He's gonna come again at the end of the day.
Okay, but he wasn't
before
crucified.
The day of judgment.
But he wasn't.
No,
crucified.
he wasn't. No, he wasn't.
Okay, he was not crucified. Okay, what if I told you that Jesus predicted his crucifixion?
What do you mean, crucifixion?
He predicted
Like he
his own.
knew, like
He
he's
predicted
gonna die.
He predicted his crucifixion and his resurrection.
Yeah, like a prophet should know that because he's a messenger of God. So,
but Islam
obviously,
says that he. But Islam says that he wasn't. He wasn't crucified.
yeah, he wasn't. Did he say? Did he actually say that he's gonna get crucified in Bible?
He says that he's going to be killed, and on the third day he's going to be resurrected. Yeah.
Did he say he's gonna get crucified? That's what he said.
He says, yeah. I mean, here, let me show you some stuff. 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
Give me 1 second here.
Yeah, take your time, no worries.
Yep. All right. 1 second here. I'm just pulling up another slide deck. I just had to find it. I appreciate your patience. All right. I don't really care if you see all my stuff right now. 1 second. Maybe I should present. I just have all the scriptures here in front of me, so I don't have to go through them. Okay. So the Quran says that Jesus wasn't crucified, right? Surah An-Nisa 157. Yeah. And so you have a dilemma. Jesus wasn't killed and raised from the dead, making him a false prophet because he actually predicts his crucifixion and his resurrection.
What is this pictures?
Just don't mind the pictures, bro. Sorry. Hope those don't offend you or anything.
No, that's okay.
And so either way, Islam is false, all right? And so I'm not saying that the New Testament is inspired. I'm not asking you to accept the New Testament as being an inspired text and saying the Bible says this and the Quran says this, and therefore it's false. What I am saying is that there's reasons to historically trust what Jesus actually said in the New Testament.
I want this statement. No, I want this statement. You said Jesus said he's going to get.
I'm going to give it to you right now.
Yeah.
I'm explaining how the argument works so that you actually know that I'm not just quoting the Bible to you, but I'm giving you reasons to think that the Bible is actually a historical account, right? And so one of the things that I'm going to talk to you about is called an undesigned coincidence, right? And so an undesigned coincidence is where two works by different authors interlock in a way that would be very unlikely if one of them copied from the other, or they were copied from a common source. And so if I go to like a baseball game, okay, for example, or a soccer match, and I come back and I say, oh man, it was crazy. Yeah, I caught a foul ball, right? And somebody else comes to you and says, oh yeah, I was at the game. I was sitting next to so-and-so and I got beer spilled all over me. Well, those two actually fit together, even though like one person there doesn't mention the foul ball and the other one doesn't mention the beer being spilled all over them. But the point is like they're giving independent testimony of two different things that fits together, because if they were tussling over a foul ball, you could understand how beer would be spilled on somebody, right?
So that means Jesus said he's gonna get killed.
No. Hold on. I'm just saying that this is the way that eyewitness testimony sounds. That's all that I'm saying at this point, right? Okay. So I'm gonna skip this, and so there's a couple things here. John has Jesus saying he cleanses the temple, right? He drives the money changers out with a whip. They get upset with him. They say, "By what authority do you do this?" He says, here's my authority. If you destroy this temple, and it says he's referring to his own body, and I'll show you the verse in just a minute. In 3 days, I will raise it again. So 3 days. Okay. He says, destroy the temple, right? So he's alluding to the crucifixion, right? And so now here's some historical details that actually back up that what John is recording. This is found in John chapter 2. In verse 18 through 20 or 18 through 22 or thereabouts. It has taken us 46 years to build this temple. You will raise it up in 3 days. Well, we know King Herod the Great actually began construction of the temple in 18 BC. We know this because Josephus tells us this. Okay, this is actually recorded in Josephus, and I can give you the references later if you want. Calculating from this date, Jesus' first confrontation with the temple at the beginning of his public ministry. This shows that this happened around AD 27 to 28. But there's more. In Luke chapter 3, verse 1, it says that in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar. Well, we actually know from Suetonius, a Roman historian, Augustus died in AD 14, but Tiberius had been his co-regent since 12 AD, and his reign was dated to that point. And so that puts John the Baptist's public ministry in AD 26 through 27, just before the date John indirectly discloses for Jesus' exchange with the Jews in the temple. And so Jesus' public ministry begins just at the time that John's is shut down. He gets arrested, he gets killed, and all that other stuff. And so here we have Suetonius, we have John's gospel, excuse me. We have Luke's gospel, we have Suetonius, and we have Josephus that all interlock together, forming this particular puzzle piece of when Jesus actually said this. This looks more like eyewitness testimony than it does like people just making stuff up. Because what you want to tell me probably as a Muslim is that your gospels have been corrupted. They're historically unreliable. They're not trustworthy. And yet we have all these interlocking details that fit together like puzzle pieces that form a coherent picture.
We never say Torah and Gospels are like false or something. We never claim that. So what we said, it's tempered. Bible is tempered by human.
Okay,
because,
so
why wouldn't you stick to the origin language like Aramaic or just the Aramaic? Because
I already told you. Because I already told you that Jesus also did speak some Greek, and if they're communicating their message to Gentiles and Jews outside of the region in Jerusalem, they're going to write in the lingua franca. They're going to write in the language that is most predominant, and that is going to be.
Is it really hard? Is it really hard to preserve the God's word rather than like literally copying, like printing different versions, like verses in different languages? What do you think? Like, what would be the best? Preserving the words of God?
What you're doing right now is don't get distracted. Just focus on this for just a second.
I'm not.
And so what I'm saying is that there are multiple historical reasons to believe that Jesus actually uttered this statement: destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. These are some confirmations right here. Also, in the very same conversation, or in a different conversation, when Jesus is on trial before Pilate, the Jews are complaining, and they're saying, we heard him say, I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and within 3 days I will build another not made with hands. And those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads, saying, aha, you who would destroy this temple. This is when he's on the cross. This is another verse. But it's like the next chapter over. Rebuild it in 3 days. And so there is nothing in the synoptic gospels that gives us a pretext for this accusation. So they're accusing Jesus of saying, I'll destroy the temple, in 3 days I'll raise it up. But if we just are reading the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, we have no idea where they're getting this accusation from. We have none. But John actually fills in the detail, because again, he says, when they ask him, hey, give us a sign, you can't just drive out the money changers. Who the heck do you think you are, cleansing the temple? Jesus answers them and says, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up. So John gives us the original statement, but not its use of the accusation. John isn't like, oh, let me explain this loose end that the synoptics gave. He's just telling the story as he knows it, right? He doesn't have this trial he doesn't even mention these words when Jesus is on trial before Pilate in John chapter 19 or any of that stuff, or 18 or whatever. So the synoptics give us the accusation, but not the original statement. So neither of these passages are copied from one another. And so what I'm saying is regardless of the languages, and regardless of the translators, and regardless of whether you think that these things are like partial corruptions or different things like that, I'm saying eyewitness testimony reads like this. It fits together with what we know in history, and it dovetails in ways to where other people kind of like nonchalantly, casually fill out another detail of the story, but they're not purposely trying to do that. They're just telling the story as they know. And so this is just a strong indication that Jesus said, hey, destroy this temple, my body, guys, and in 3 days I'll resurrect it, which goes completely against the Islamic narrative. So right there, he's predicting his crucifixion his death and his resurrection. And you guys are saying, no, he was rescued by Allah and it made, somebody else died or whatever. It wasn't him. And I'm saying, no, we have historical reasons that go back to eyewitnesses, not a revelation to a guy in a cave in Arabia hundreds of years later. Does that make sense?
But that doesn't imply that he's going to get crucified. It doesn't like. He
said, destroy this temple, in 3 days I will raise it up. So he's saying, and then those same stories that have all these marks of eyewitness testimony show that he actually did have his temple destroyed and that he was resurrected. I have way more reason. This is just the tip of the iceberg here. This is just one pericope, one story. I can give you dozens and dozens of external confirmations.
Now give me the verses like he said he's going to get killed, and in a way that it actually implies that he's going to get crucified. That's all I need. Okay, that's all I need from you.
Okay.
I don't need anything else.
Mark 8:31 through 33, and he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. Was Jesus killed on Islam, or was he just taken up to Allah?
It literally said be killed, not crucified or anything. Do you see that?
Are you really going to hang on this when Jesus is predicting?
No, okay, I'm not going to hang on this. Okay, I'm not going to hang on this. It's kind of like
3
a double
days
standard here. Okay, let me tell you. When Jesus said in the Quran, yeah, maybe here in Aramaic, maybe it said crucified, but you guys don't know the Aramaic version of that. You guys just like literally translated the Greek into English. You see how many languages like came? Like there are so many middlemans in the Bible. Many middlemans.
But what we have is coming from witnesses. That's what I'm trying to show you.
Okay, nice. Witness. Yeah, I believe that.
So you think the Gospels are written by witnesses?
Gospels and Torahs are from the God. Okay? They seen all those things, like Jesus and that time. I'm talking
about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Are they witnesses and companions of witnesses? That's what I'm saying.
It's Jesus' companions.
Jesus' companions, right? Who would also be witnesses to his ministry, correct?
Yeah, could be. And Mark and John, whatever you say, I'm not sure about Mark and John. Like they see something, they witness something, but John is literally at the foot of the cross. Okay.
Mark is not a witness, but traditionally he is. He goes back to Peter's testimony. That's what the early church unanimously said, that he was like a scribe or a companion of the apostle Peter. So Peter would be a direct witness to the ministry of Jesus. And right here, Peter gets rebuked and called Satan by Jesus for saying, hey, guys, I'm predicting something here. I'm going to be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed. 3 days later, I'm going to rise again. And Peter's like, no, you're not doing that, Jesus. And he turns to him and he says, get behind me, Satan. So why would somebody, if they're not telling the truth, make up an embarrassing story about Peter putting his foot in his mouth, rebuking the Lord, telling him what he thinks he should do, or the Messiah or Jesus, whatever?
Maybe it wasn't him.
That's not likely to be. Okay, so right now you're dealing with maybes and buts. What I'm trying to say is, no, usually people who are trying to tell the truth will even be willing to share embarrassing details if they're just trying to stick with the actual narrative in the story. And so these are two different things. I gave you external confirmations through history of what we know of where Jesus was, the time that Jesus was. It was the spring of 27 AD or 28 AD. Okay. We have what he said and what he predicted, that his temple, which he was referring to his body, would be destroyed and 3 days be resurrected. And then he's giving an embarrassing detail that would be surprising if it was just a lie, that they're just going to throw Peter under the bus. This is definitely Peter because it says he turned and rebuked Peter. Okay. And so we have embarrassing testimony. We have testimony that dovetails with one another with the accusations that are being made against him. And then John filling in the detail that this is something that he said earlier in his ministry that was remembered, and there's this garbled version of it. And so we have all these marks of eyewitness testimony. So why should I trust this or trust Muhammad over what the Gospels tell me, that he was actually predicted his crucifixion, was crucified, and was resurrected?
Okay, first of all, you said that the temple got destroyed and he
said destroyed this temple. He's referring to his body. The text says that when I say that this temple, he says the temple he's referring to was his body. Because his body was a temple of the Holy Spirit. God, he was saying God dwells in me.
And where was it? I'm sorry, where was it?
This is in John chapter 2, verses 18 through 22. It was at the temple
Show me
in
that.
Jerusalem in 28 AD.
Show me that verse. Show me that verse on the screen.
Sure. I just had it up just a minute ago. There you go. So then the Jewish leaders responded, "What sign can you show us since you are doing these things?" Jesus replied, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up again." What other temple could he have been talking about? He's obviously talking about his body.
Yeah.
The Jewish leaders said to him, "This temple has been under construction for 46 years, which we found out is historically accurate and allows us to pinpoint exactly when this conversation went happen through Luke's gospel, through Suetonius, and through Josephus, who are Roman and Jewish historians." And they're saying, "Are you going to raise it up in 3 days?" And so we know when this happened. And then we saw in Mark's gospel that when he's on the cross, people are saying, "Hey, guy who bragged about having your body, who bragged about destroying the temple and in 3 days raising it up again," they're just parroting a garbled version of this testimony of what he said earlier. But Mark's gospel and those other gospels, they never give us any clue about what this accusation is about. But then John gives us what he said, but he never gives us in his trial before Pilate or the high priest or anybody what this they never bring this accusation up to him, right? And so what I'm saying is this fits together like the example that I gave of this being eyewitness testimony. John repeatedly in his gospel 1935, 21:24, 20:31 says that he's an eyewitness, right? And then if you read First John, who is also the same writer of John's gospel, he says, "We handled the word of life. We touched him." He's referring to the resurrected Jesus. He teaches that Jesus is resurrected in his gospel. So this completely contradicts Islam. I'm telling you, I have historical reasons that ground my faith.
I'm going to come to that verse that you said, Jesus said, Ahmad will come in, right? That's what you said. I'm coming to this one where you said Jesus is going to get crucified according to the Bible. And I didn't see anything like that. But look, let me tell you, in Islam, it also says instead of Jesus, someone else got crucified. It's not Jesus. We don't trust that. We don't trust Jesus got crucified. So, it's someone else. Maybe in Aramaic, yep, there is a crucifixion, like you say, like he said he's going to get crucified. But in Aramaic, it said he's going to get crucified, but they never mention it. They never mention it. It's
so
like
you're hanging on butts in that the Greek translators didn't.
No, I'm not.
Right.
I'm not. I'm just saying.
You're hanging on bare possibility. That's what you're doing.
The way you say it,
hold on. Melvin, respectfully.
Yeah.
Respectfully.
I'm listening.
I'm giving you historical evidence on why you can trust the Gospels. This is just the tip of the iceberg. This is a very small thing about Jesus predicting his resurrection. What you're giving me is maybe, but I don't believe that. I'm giving you evidence. So I'm asking you, if you're going to reply, to give me evidence.
Yeah, sure. I will. But let's come to this one point, like you said, you're talking about the history, like where Jesus said about the crucifixion, it's not there. Same thing in the Quranic verse that you talked about, that Jesus said like he's gonna come, like there's a person who's gonna come in as Ahmed. That's what you said. And we're not sure. We know like Ahmed's gonna come in, and I told you like Muhammad was in that time, the Arab people used to call him Ahmed before he's Muhammad like or something. And nobody talks about that one, but they know Muhammad and the miracles that he did, a lot of miracles like Jesus Christ and all. And because of that, we believe that Muhammad, this is the right revelation, like the correct one from God.
Okay, so just to cut you off there's so many different ways that I can go here, and I'm going to let you go here in a minute. I just want to give you something to think about.
Yeah.
This source that I'm quoting to you right now is John, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Okay. Jesus left the scene around 30 to 33 AD. These Gospels were written anywhere, and some even liberal scholars will date Mark as early as 40 something, and as late as 70. Okay. And then
Yeah.
you have Matthew, Mark. You just told me that Muhammad did miracles when repeatedly all throughout the Quran, he says, guys, I'm just a warner. 1759, 1021, multiple places. He says, he basically, why has no sign been given? 13:7. Why has no sign been given to him from his Lord? I say to them, I am just a warner. There is no miracles contained in the Quran. There's only Muhammad's denial of the ability to be able to perform them. And then, worse than that, 200 years later, you have hadiths go through a long chain of narrators that thousands upon thousands of them were thrown out. And then not only that, like the sources themselves tell me wild things like Musa had his clothes stolen from him by a rock so that people could make sure that he didn't have a hernia on his gonads. And then he beat a rock and took his clothes back. And that if you drink camel pee, that's a cure. And if you take 7 ashwa dates in the morning, you're immune from poison and magic.
Well,
I'm not going to trust. I'm not going. I'm not going to. I'm not going to trust. I'm not going to trust those sources about his miracles. So you're.
Yeah, I don't trust hadith. Let me tell you, hadith is like more like a Bible. Okay, it has a lot of versions. Like hadith has a lot of versions. We don't trust. We barely trust hadith. Okay, let me tell you there. We barely trust hadith.
You don't have any testimony of his miracles. You don't have any.
Yeah, we have a Sahih Hadith. That's called a Sahih Hadith. That we need to verify the authors and all those.
Your Sahih Hadiths are full of absurdities and contradictions, and they were compiled 200 years later by people living hundreds and sometimes thousands of miles away. And like you don't have a reliable source for the miracles.
We have a lot of source. You have
sources. You have. Yeah, but the Quran doesn't say. The Quran contradicts the Sunnah. The Quran says, I can't do miracles. I don't do miracles. Signs are from Allah. I don't do miracles. We have no recorded miracles of the messenger of your book.
The
only thing that he says is he says, my miracle is the Quran, guys. That's the miracle. Like that's what you get. That's what you get. You have the Quran. Okay. And so the reason even Quranists will tell you, like, no, we don't think Muhammad did miracles. All these stories that come from later hadiths are embarrassing and silly, and they're not good sources that he did miracles. And so I don't care if they're sahih. There's a lot of sahih that is a lot of hee a lot of every goopy story that I just gave you about the Ashwa dates. That's sahih.
That's Sahih. Okay.
That's Sahih. I can show you if I need to.
Sure.
But anyway, I have videos. Just head to the videos.
Absolutely,
look them up yourself. Like look them up yourself. Just Google.
I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna come back to you because this is like first time talking to you now. I'm gonna come back to you with
but what I'm
all
saying,
the histories and the proofs. Okay, because I'm like kind of busy and someone called me because there was no Muslim right now to talk with you.
Well, I appreciate you calling.
Like it. Yeah, and respectfully, Eric, I'm gonna ask you one more question, okay?
Sure.
And after that, I might leave. So, did you read the whole Quran, like a research?
Have I read the whole Quran? I'm reading through the whole Quran right now.
Okay.
So I will be honest with you, I have not read the entire Quran. I've read big parts of it, but I have not read all of the Quran, and so that is something that I'm working on. And it is something that I'm definitely going to do. I would like to be a part of the thing that David Wood is doing with this project where we're all going to be reading through the whole Quran. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, it's something that
that's
I will
great.
be doing.
That's great. Like we're in the same page. We all want to find the truth, right? We don't want to like, okay, I'm in this religion, I'm going to just follow this and that, right? We're not going to do that. We're going to read through everything and we're going to find out which one is truth and we're going to go for it. That's all.
Okay.
Right. So thanks for having me, Eric.
Yeah. Thanks, Melvin. I appreciate you coming up.
Yeah. Maybe next time I'm going to join you again with the histories and all those things, the proofs and all.
You're welcome to come. You're welcome to come back, bro. Thanks for being respectful and coming up. All right. Take care.
Have a great day. Yeah. You too. Take care.
Yep. All right. Let's see. We got Stephanie. Let's see if she's in the back here. Well, I'll let her come up. Stephanie, are you a Muslim or a Mormon?
Well, I'm Catholic.
Oh, okay. Muslims or Mormons only today. I'm sorry, buddy.
Oh, so
We do have talk about doubt streams. If you have questions about Christianity, maybe some confusions that you'd like to clear it up, be on the lookout for those.
like my belief in a Islamic Antichrist.
No, no, not for sharing your own kind of thing. Sorry, man. My platform is for me. If you got stuff you want to share with me, you can shoot me an email, and I could look at that if you have some theories or something you want to share.
Sorry.
No worries, man. No worries.
Bye.
Yeah. All right. Let's see if we got any more super chats or anything. Hopefully this has been helpful so far. Cloud of Witnesses, thank you for doing this, Eric. God bless you. No problem. And so, yeah, no, I appreciate that. Doing what I can. As you guys can see, this is something new to me, but the only way you get good at something is by doing it. Like, I could sit on the sidelines and just read my scripts. I'm a way better writer than I am probably talking live, but ain't nothing to it but to do it. You just gotta put yourself out there and have conversations with people. This is a funny one, right? Okay, what is your guess on IP's denomination? I can tell you right now, he's high church. But I think he's Protestant. I'm pretty sure he's Protestant. I don't think he's Orthodox, and I'm pretty positive he's not Catholic. And so he's not a Calvinist, so that rules out Presbyterianism. And he could be Anglican, because that's high church. And they, especially ACNA, he does seem to be a egalitarian, meaning that he's probably okay with some women preachers. But he's not a liberal. So ACNA maybe is my guess. That's Anglican Church of North America. The other guess that I have is Lutheran. There is one conservative Lutheran denomination that does allow for women preachers, but they're not like the ELCA, where they just go for all of this, like, Jesus was trans stuff and, all the crazy stuff you see on TikTok, that's just promoting a bunch of woke, gay, weird ideology, which obviously we know IP doesn't go for any of that. And so some kind of, I don't remember that denomination's name, but it's some Lutheran denomination that is pretty conservative that does allow female ministers, or ACNA, which also allows for them. That'd be my guess. Or he just doesn't, subscribe to all of his church's beliefs. And then I think he's Lutheran because he's very sarcastic and salty. And how many Lutherans have you met that aren't sarcastic and salty? Therefore, IP is probably Lutheran. That's my deduction there. So hope you guys appreciated that. That's my detective work there. Angel asks, how do I pray for those who haven't found Christ? And so Matthew chapter 9, verse 37 through 38, it says, Jesus saw the crowds, he was moved with compassion, and he said, pray that laborers be sent into the harvest, right? It says that the harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Pray, therefore, that laborers would be sent into the harvest. And so what I like to do, Angel, is just, we know that certain people are going to be somebody's cup of tea over somebody else. And so I just say, hey, God, please send somebody who, that they can relate to, that can communicate the gospel to them in an effective way, and just send somebody across their path. And so that's what I pray, because that's the biblical way to pray for them. John chapter 16, verse 7 through 11 also talks about the conviction of the Holy Spirit. So just pray that God would use his Holy Spirit to convict them of sin when they do hear the gospel. And so that is the way to do that. Let's see. Damien Paris. All right. Damien, are you a Muslim or a Mormon?
Hi, Eric. I'm actually a Catholic, but I have a doubt that one of my Muslim friends brought up. Can I share it with you right now?
I'll tell you what I'm going to do, because this stream is for just Muslims and Mormons only. I appreciate you having the question and you have a doubt. What I'm going to do is I would like to send you to just talkaboutdoubts.com, fill out a form. And if you want to, I could, or one of the other counselors could actually meet with you and talk to you privately, one-on-one, and squash that doubt for you. So talkaboutdoubts.com. Yep. Or we do live streams once a month with me and usually Jonathan or another one of the counselors, and you could join that stream as well. Is that fair enough?
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you very
All
much, Eric. I love your videos. Keep it up. God bless you,
All right.
man.
Yeah, bless you too, sir. Appreciate it. All right, all right. All right. Remember, Muslims and or Mormons and Mormons and Muslims only. Got a little distracted. I was trying to read super chats at the same time. But again, that's what Talk About Doubts is for. If you are a Christian, you got questions, we would definitely love to talk to you. Definitely love to talk to you. And those are very good conversations, and we'll be doing more of those streams as well. And so I don't know what this, it looks like a big number, but I don't know what the exchange rate is for this. But Gomi says, love what you do, Eric. You've helped me grow. Went from a very confused agnostic now to rebuilding my relationship with God. Thank you very much. Wow. No, thank you very much. Thank you for the super chat. But thank you so much for the testimony. That is wonderful. That is awesome. I really, really appreciate that testimony. That is encouraging for me to hear. And so, yeah, praise God. Praise God. To God be all the glory. And so, but I'm glad that I can just, be his instrument and provide the information and all that good stuff. So thank you very, very much for that testimony. That is awesome. That is why I do what I do. So appreciate it. Daniel Apologetics. How dare you show your face around here, you minimalist bootlicker? No, I'm just kidding. Daniel and I are friends. He's been rocking with the channel since way back. Definitely check out his channel, Daniel Apologetics. Lots of good stuff. But he did come out with a very regrettable video where we were earlier talking about arguments for the resurrection, and I kind of came down pretty hard on the minimal facts case for the resurrection. And Daniel was like, no, it works. Well, sorry, Daniel, just because the argument works doesn't mean it's good, and that we should use it. We're not, scientific miracle arguments work for some people, Daniel, but I don't think that the Muslims, some Muslims at least, would say, hey, don't use those. So no, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I look forward to your rebuttal. If you have a good case for it, I'd be willing to hear it. I'd be willing to be wrong, because I think I enjoy listening to guys like Gary and Mike, but I just don't find their arguments for the resurrection very compellable. Wow, there's a word. All right, we got a couple more people coming to the stage. I saw Flash jump on the camera. Flash, are you Muslim or Mormon?
Hey man, I'm a Muslim.
All right. What do you got, bro? Do you remember, did you watch the earlier part of the stream? Do you know the discussion?
I watched some of it, but I was also active in the chat, so I couldn't watch all of it, to be honest. I just came here to ask a general question. Is that okay?
Yeah, we'll give it a try. We'll
okay, sure. It was mostly about the reason behind God sacrificing his own son or himself in a way. That's what Christians believe, right? To basically forgive the original sin from the Christians, or all the people in the Christians, if they seek the truth or whatever, right? So I'm wondering, why did the God have to sacrifice himself, or a human, or his son, all of this at once, to forgive people? Why wouldn't he just forgive them? Did he have to show, did he have to prove something to Satan or something like that, or what's the point behind that?
What's the point? I mean, there's a number of different ways to answer this. So are you saying substitutionary atonement is unjust? Or seems unjust?
I am saying,
or I mean, are you implying, or do you think that? I mean, it's not it's not a gotcha. It's just a
right.
question.
I don't think God needs to substitute something to forgive someone.
I don't think that he has to. I think that he chose to.
But why?
To show the seriousness of sin.
And the sin that we are forgiven is the original sin, right?
It's not. It's not just original sin.
Oh, it's also not, it's all sins.
It's sins that you commit. It's sins that you and I commit. So if you were to stand before Allah and for judgment, would you feel like why should he let you come
Enter
to heaven?
paradise?
Yeah, enter paradise.
Yeah, we believe that it's not really well, our actions will determine our level in paradise or hell, but really we go to heaven based on like just thanks to the God's mercy, right? That's what we believe.
I appreciate that. That's honest. But you do know it's in the Sunnah where it talks about Muhammad saying that like a Jew and a Christian would take the place of a Muslim being in hellfire, right? Are you familiar with that?
I'm not.
You're not? Okay. I gotta remember where that is. Bear with me. Yes. Oh, this is the weak one. There's a Sahih one. Let me find it. Bear with me here. Bear with me. While I'm looking this up real quick, though, I believe with substitutionary atonement, it shows two things. It shows the mercy of God in one sense, because he becomes a man. He faces every temptation that we could possibly face, yet he is without sin. Yet he voluntarily lays himself down, allows himself to become sin, who didn't even know sin, so that we could be justified as a free gift, right? It's still the mercy of God, right? But it shows the seriousness of sin, because it shows that he's not just like forgiving sin on a whim, just basically predestination. I've chosen you. You're in. He is basically saying, no, like, this is the seriousness of sin. This is the wages of sin. This is the punishment of sin. This is the awfulness of sin. This is the judgment that I'm not putting on you, even though you deserve every bit of it. And so for me as a Christian, a lot of people get this idea of like, well, you have this idea that Jesus died for you and therefore you can sin and do whatever you want. No, that makes me see the awfulness of sin, the dreadfulness of sin. And it shows me the love of God, that he loved me so much that he was willing to put all of my sin on Jesus, and Jesus was willing to voluntarily take it for me. I don't want anything to do with something like that if that's what put him into that. And so,
right. But you still sin, I'm guessing.
Well, we all sin and come short, but we confess our sins. We believe that Jesus is the mediator for those sins, and that he speaks to God on our behalf and says, hey, like, this is the sacrifice. This is the atonement that I made for them. And yeah. And so, but here, let me show you real quick what I was talking about now that I finally have it here. And this is in multiple places, by the way. I'm sorry that the font is so small. I don't know why it's showing up so small, but it says, Abu Musa reported that Allah's messenger said, this is Sahih Muslim 2767a.
Okay.
When it will be the day of resurrection, Allah will deliver to a Muslim, a Jew, and a Christian, and say, that is your rescue from hellfire.
Right.
So that looks like, at least I'm telling you as an outsider, when I'm reading that, you're going to have to come with some proofs to kind of overcome like something here, because it looks to me like even Muhammad was totally okay with substitutionary atonement. In this case, it's God's innocent son who is willing to sacrifice himself, even though he doesn't deserve it. Here it's innocent Jews or Christians, apparently, or, ones that apparently the Muslim deserves the hellfire more than they do. But he's like, no, this is your ransom. This is your rescue from the hellfire. And so you have to also kind of deal with this stuff in your own, not also, you do have to deal with this stuff in your own text. And so to me, I would rather, it makes more sense to me for somebody to voluntarily pay my debt that I owed than for him to extract it from somebody else who doesn't want to give it and be like, not too bad, go to hell anyways. You know what I mean?
Let me just say one thing. I don't usually like arguments that uses the opponent's books, like for Muslims as well. I don't really like the argument, oh, actually, Jesus never said he was God, for example, because who are you to interpret someone else's book better than them in a way? Well, unless you're a scholar or something. But I don't, I'll be very honest, I don't really understand this this.
No, that's
thing,
fine. I
like,
appreciate
that
your
is
honesty
rescue from hellfire. But either way, like using someone else's book against them, there's definitely, like, clearly, right, there's interpretations of that book that fit the Muslim narrative, and similarly there's here's 20 contradictions in Bible or Quran, where, well, there is interpretations of all those verses that fit within the narrative of the religion of that book. So there isn't really, I don't see the point in arguing like, oh, here's my misinterpretation of this of your book, therefore my book is right or your book is wrong.
No, that's I mean, if you don't want to get into that, that's totally fine. That's
right.
Totally. So I gave you my explanation.
Right.
I just think it's the justice of God and the mercy of God that meet, and that's my explanation. And so there's also the historical fact that just Jesus was crucified, that he predicted his crucifixion, that I went through earlier with the previous caller. I don't know if you're paying attention to that one.
I did.
And that Jesus himself believed this. And so even if I don't fully understand it, if Jesus says, I am going to lay down my life and give it as a ransom for many, and there are strong historical reasons to say that, and then going back to the very original argument of the original stream, if there is this big red flag in Islam, and on top of that, historical reasons to believe that the Gospels are reliable, then even if I don't understand exactly all the theology and can explain it to somebody in a way that's going to perfectly satisfy them, or even fully myself, that doesn't negate that's what Jesus taught and believed. And so I'm gonna rock with Jesus. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I actually have another question, but I just got a guest come in, so I have to go.
No worries, man. I appreciate you for the good question.
Maybe I'll join later. Okay.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate it. Thanks, man. All right, just jump to the next guy. Nate, looks like you're muted, bud. Says he's a Mormon, so I appreciate you just identifying off the top. All right, Nate, did you see the original argument at the beginning of the stream?
Was it the argument about Joseph Smith adding himself into scripture and making prophecies about himself?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm guessing this probably is expanding off of your video. I'm kind of late to the stream, but I'm guessing it's probably expanding off of your arguments you made in a previous video, where you basically argue that Joseph Smith added himself into scripture, and that that's one of the few reasons why Mormons believe that the LDS Church is true. Is that?
Well, I'm not saying that's why necessarily. Yeah, no, you're good. No, you're fine. Let me bring it up. Let me bring it up real quick here. I forgot to. The fact that you are familiar with the argument from before, and you kind of have a handle of it, is
it's been a couple weeks or months since I watched.
It has.
I'm a little rusty, and I joined late.
That's fine. And so, oops, I'm trying to present here. Boomer in here. Okay, here we go. All right. So yeah, it is about the Genesis 53. Genesis 50:33 claims that Joseph Smith was coming, was foretold by Joseph, right? Joseph in Egypt, not Joseph Smith. But this prophecy doesn't appear anywhere in any historical record that we have about the words of Jesus. It's not written down. The people of Smith's day couldn't have gone to any independent historical source for these words. And the only source that we have for these is that Joseph had these words re-revealed to him, and they were given to Smith. God re-revealed them to him, supposedly, right?
Right.
And so the problem here is a couple things. Is one, God allowed Joseph of Egypt, right? His words to be lost, or I should say of Jacob, really. He's not of Egypt. He was in Egypt. He allowed those words to be lost. So that's pretty negligent of God. And then he re-reveals them to the prophet they're about, which is very shady looking, because two things is one, it's circular. In order to believe in the prophecy, I got to believe in the prophet. But in order to believe in the prophet, I got to believe in the prophecy. And God just isn't a poor reasoner like that. The other thing too is it looks very shady. It's like writing yourself a 5-star review. You know, it's like, and the other thing too is that this is precisely, I think, a good reason why Mormons should reject Muhammad, because Muhammad does the same thing. he in Surah 61:6, he says, he basically has Jesus prophesy and say, hey, there's a messenger coming after me, and I'm going to even name him by name, just like Joseph names him by name. He says, another Joseph is coming, and his dad's going to be named Joseph too, which we know that is Smith. And he says, hey, Jesus prophesied my coming. Ahmad, I'm Ahmad. Jesus said so. And yet we have zero historical record of this prophecy. And so if you would reject Muhammad, or at least be extra suspicious of him for that reason, then you should apply the same consistent standard to Joseph Smith. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess I have kind of two thoughts about this. So the first would be, I think as humans, we all provide our own interpretive lenses towards scripture and the way that we view it, right? Because like with the Gospels, for example, a lot of biblical scholars believe that basically a lot of Jews who wrote the Gospels saw Jesus in a lot of the prophecies, and they kind of tried to write him into some of them. And that's not to say he doesn't like fulfill any prophecies, but it's kind of like, I think, is it Isaiah 53? It's the one about the suffering servant, I want to say. A lot of people read Jesus into that prophecy, but
do you think he's the fulfillment of Isaiah 53?
I don't know. I know that there's a lot of scholarly contention on that.
Okay.
But I think it's plausible that Joseph Smith is giving his own interpretive.
So he's not really saying these scriptures were lost. These are just, but that, to me, that's kind of confusing. I'm just coming from my perspective as a non-LDS person, and I'm saying he's literally, by all appearances, putting these words in. I mean, I can pull up the actual, the verse, right?
Yeah.
It's right there. And a seer I will bless, and they that seek shall destroy him shall be confounded. For this promise I will give to you, for I will remember you from generation to generation. His name will be called Joseph. And it's da 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 da. These are words that he's like literally putting in Joseph's mouth, like verbatim. Like he said this. I don't know how to see it as like, well, he didn't really say this. It's just kind of like Joseph sort of thought it. I could see that, if it was written differently, but it's just not. It's not written differently.
Right.
You see why that would be a red flag for an outsider if they see previous false prophets doing the same exact thing, and then Smith just takes a page out of the apparently takes a page out of the Mohammedan playbook.
Yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from. Here, I'm gonna try and pull something up without
you're fine.
Closing
you're
this tab on my phone. Give me a sec.
No, I appreciate it. All right, we need some hold music. While he's pulling that up, and Nate, just feel free to jump in if you can hear me. Competing, what's the word? Explanation of Isaiah 53 not being Jesus is going to be about the Jews. And I think Origen squashed that a long time ago. He says in Contra Celsus 155, now I remember on one occasion at a disputation held with certain Jews who reckoned, I'll just show the tab here, who were reckoned wise men, I quoted these prophecies, to which my Jewish opponent said that these predictions bore a reference to the whole people regarded as one individual and as being in a state of dispersion and suffering, in order that many proselytes might be gained on account of the dispersion of the Jews among numerous heathen and nations. And in this way he explained the words, thy form shall be of no reputation among men. And then to whom they said no message was sent, rejecting him with the expression, a man of suffering. And then he gives the reply here. Many arguments were employed on that occasion during the discussion to prove that these predictions regarding one particular person were not rightly applied to the whole nation. And I asked to what character the expression would be appropriate. This man bears our sins and suffers pains on our behalf, but he was wounded for our sins and bruised for our iniquities, to whom this expression properly belonged. By his stripes we were healed. For it is manifest that it is they who had been sinners and had been healed by the Savior's sufferings, whether belonging to the Jewish nation or converts from the Gentiles, who such language in the writings of the prophet who foresaw these events, and who, under the influence of the Holy Spirit, apply these words to a person. But we seem to press them the hardest with the expression, because of the iniquities of my people, he was led away to death. For if people among them are the subject of the prophecy, then how can the man be led away to death because of the iniquities of the people of God, unless he is a different person from the people of God? And so, anyways, sorry, I was just giving people some context while you were looking that up, because I don't have the cool God Logic whole music. But anyway, yeah, it makes more sense, way more sense for this to be applying to Jesus, especially because it says that he was buried in a rich man with his death. Well, Israel wasn't buried with a rich man in their death. Israel is still a people, and they weren't buried with a rich man in their death. And so this makes way more sense that it's about Jesus. But anyways, go ahead. What were you looking up there, and what was your counterpoint?
Okay, can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay, so on Isaiah 53, from what I'm aware, so this is part of what most scholars recognize as Deutero-Isaiah, and I would say probably the majority believe it was written exilic or post-exilic. And so from what I'm aware, the scholarly interpretation generally is that it's about Yahweh's promises that Israel will be freed from bondage and, that kind of stuff. But there are, from what I'm aware, alternate interpretations. So, but I think my point is that everyone kind of sees themselves in scripture, and I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if Joseph Smith saw himself in scripture, kind of like with I'm forgetting the scripture, but it's the one that talks about the two branches. I'm sure you've heard it from Mormons, where they talk about how, or the stick of Ephraim and the stick of Joseph, right?
Mm-hmm.
How one is the Book of Mormon and how one is the Bible. But I think most scholars probably recognize that it's referring to the northern and southern kingdoms, if I'm not mistaken. Is that okay? Does that sound right?
I don't know. You would probably know better than I would. And so,
yeah. So,
but I think it's a little bit different than just like what you're saying here is that Joseph took a lot of artistic license in basically having Joseph. There's so many Josephs here, but Joseph in Egypt in Genesis, that Joseph prophesying his coming, and it reads extremely literally. It's not like he's saying like, I kind of saw myself like the previous Mormon that came up earlier. You're way more friendly than him, by the way. Was basically like, well, yeah, but Jesus said Abraham rejoiced to see my day. He was glad. Well, I could see Jesus kind of saying, theologically speaking, Abraham saw my day. The angel of the Lord appeared unto Abraham and said, hey, don't sacrifice your son. And I, the angel, speaking for the Lord, I'm going to bless you. And I'm going to make your nations, or you, a great nation, and your descendants are going to be this great blessing and all this other stuff. And then the church coming along and being like, okay, Jesus was that seed. He was that descendant. And Jesus himself saying, believing like, hey, I'm going to build this church and the gates of hell won't prevail against it and all this other stuff. And like seeing like, I'm the fulfillment that everything that Abraham saw. And so he saw my day. He rejoiced. He was glad because he probably did. He probably had this idea that there was going to be a deliverer. There's these traditions about Genesis and somebody crushing the head of the serpent and a seed dominating the and reversing the curse and all that other stuff, he probably saw that, and he probably had a foretaste to that and saw that. That's kind of interpretive though, and you know, and I don't think Jesus is like saying, hey guys, I was named by name by Abraham in this prophecy that doesn't really exist, and I'm adding it right now to the Bible. That's not like the same thing. That's not what's going on here. This is Smith literally saying, hey, Joseph literally said this, guys. Like it doesn't seem to be like he's already writing in a historical narrative, and he's tacking on, by all appearances, verses in a narrative that would be taken as historical in the book of Genesis. And so I just don't see, you know, him just kind of cooking himself in there creatively and being that being okay. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. And I guess I was more so thinking of verses in the Book of Mormon that prophesy him, because I guess.
Well, I mean, that's just as
yeah,
it's the same problem. It's the exact same thing. Yeah, it is. I know what verses you're those. I don't remember the exact verses off the top of my head, but they're in there. They're definitely in there, and that's goofy. Like there's a certain, and I'm not anti-charismatic. I am charismatic, but we have some goofy people out there in the charismatic church. But I know a guy who basically says like there was this supposed great healing evangelist in the early 1900s, and that supposedly prophesied that somebody was going to have his mantle, so to speak, and be able to do the same miracles that he did, and that this was only re-revealed like a few decades ago. That guy had been dead for 60 years. Well, I'm going to be like, dude, that's a huge red flag. Like, I don't believe you. Like, unless you can give me some serious healing proof miracles, like people coming back from situations that are medically impossible, then I might be like, okay, maybe there's some truth to that, or something, like maybe that is true, but if he doesn't have that,
and I guess I can see where you're coming from, but I think that this is where, I guess Latter-day Saints could probably respond by, I guess, I don't see why. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out a way to articulate what I'm thinking. I guess I can't see why why this couldn't be a revealed prophecy about Joseph Smith, if that makes any sense. I guess I can totally see where you're coming from, where this definitely seems fishy. I agree. But
so it is fishy. Or at least apparently fishy. Prima facie, it's fishy
on its own. But I think a lot of Latter-day Saints, when they ground reasons to believe, they ground in other things. Like, I mean, of course, even back when I was a Methodist, I'd make fun of Mormons because I think most Mormons kind of use the idea of like a burning in the bosom as evidence for the church's truth claim.
Sure.
I
well,
think
they do.
They do, yeah. And I still disagree with that. But they also use other things like, for example, the 3 and the 8 witnesses of the Book of Mormon. How there are these 3 people and these 8 people who, the 3 saw an angel, and they all left the church, and they actually publicly denounced Joseph Smith, but they continued to...
They kept their testimony.
Yeah, they kept testifying that they saw the golden plates, and even
but
Hiram Smith died for his testimony. That's kind of my point.
I understand. If you saw the plates but couldn't interpret them, would that be miraculous to you, though? I'm just granting, just for the sake of argument, that if you saw golden plates, are golden plates by themselves miraculous?
Yeah, so this is interesting, because one of the 8 witnesses, when he left the church, he kind of said that he saw the plates, but he couldn't interpret them, which is how he justified him leaving the church. But there's kind of 2 things I have to say about that. So the first thing I'd say is that with the 3 witnesses, they all claimed to see a vision of an angel and hear God's voice, and it was a lot more miraculous, right?
So can you tell me, Nate, because the previous guy couldn't, and I could be wrong. But as far as I understand, and this is just my own curiosity jumping in, I don't mean to cut you off rudely or anything. what were the details like of that particular appearance? Because he said, well, there's this book and supposedly it's a biography. And I'm like, I don't know when that biography came about. I don't know where he's recording this testimony. But as far as I understand, the Moroni appearance to the three witnesses, we don't have a lot of, like, compared to, say, the Gospels, where they're touching Jesus, they're eating with Jesus, they spend 40 days with Jesus, they're seeing him in groups, there's all this other stuff. I'm not saying three people isn't a group, but you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, there's all this, like, multi-sensory stuff. And I'm not seeing the same multi-sensory testimony with the three.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that they saw them, and that's a claim. And I don't
Yes.
know what grounds that.
So with the 8 witnesses, Hiram Smith said in one account that he felt with his hands and saw with his eyes. And the 3 witnesses talked about on several occasions that they flipped through the pages with their hands. And then there's also Emma Smith. She didn't see the plates with her eyes because they were covered in a cloth, but she was able to flip through the leaves.
Sure.
And
well, I mean I mean Moroni.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
Moroni?
I mean Moroni itself.
Oh, are you asking if they gave like a physical description of him, or?
Yeah. Like, were the details of the testimony multisensory?
Of seeing Moroni himself.
Yeah.
I would have to look into the documents, but I know for a fact that seeing the plates themselves, it was multisensory. And
sure, I understand that.
Yeah.
But that's why in the previous question, I just was curious, because he was basically making a claim and just saying, well, it's in this book, but I don't know what it says. Kind of trust me, bro. And I'm like, okay, well, but like, you got to give me more evidence than that. And so I just was wondering if you knew, just out of curiosity. And so plates by themselves doesn't tell you anything about the content of those plates, right? Like, they couldn't translate them, right? So, like, is just gold? Is there anything miraculous about a golden plate?
So contextually, I mean, Joseph Smith was a poor farmer. I mean, he couldn't afford paper for the printing of the Book of Mormon. That's why he needed David Whitmer to fund the project.
Right.
And so, it would have been very costly if he made plates. We'll say, for the sake of an internal critique, we'll say he did. It would have been very expensive. He would have had to have some form of metal smithing skills, or at least know someone who could do that.
Sure, but just think about it this way. Now, compare, like, but it's something that could be mistaken somehow. Right. You could get fake stuff, whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be gold. Right. But, like, say, compared to Jesus's resurrection or the parting of the Red Sea,
right?
Like, it's not on. You admit that that's nowhere near on the same level as that. You have to, right?
This gets kind of difficult because in terms of, like, I don't know, in terms of documentary history, it's kind of hard to, I guess, compare them. It kind of feels like comparing apples and oranges, because I know that you believe in traditional, biblical authorship. I'm kind of agnostic on, like, gospel authorship. With the 3 and the 8 witnesses, we have, like, several, interviews and firsthand accounts from them. With the Gospels, there's a lot of debate. I'm sure you've covered it in your channel.
Oh yeah, I've covered it a lot. And it's fine.
A dead horse.
Yeah, we could get into that at some. Well, I'm probably gonna have to end the stream soon, but no, this is good. I appreciate it. And so what I'm trying to say is, like, if Smith had, like, some sort of undeniable miracle that could overcome, because this at first looks sketchy, which you admitted. You said it could look sketchy.
Yeah, on its own, I agree.
Muhammad did it, and it also looks sketchy. So you would have to point to something else, like Joseph Smith making a prophecy that was fulfilled. And I can give you examples of ones that aren't. Maybe you would push back on those. But more than that, like, if God's going to validate a messenger, he's going to do it by fulfilled prophecy or miracles. And you're going to say, okay, well, the Book of Mormon itself is, a miracle because there was these golden plates, which he was able to translate, and yada, yada, yada. And I'm just saying, hey, golden plates in and of themselves is not miraculous enough for me to go, okay, here's this initial sketchiness, but golden plates is just golden plates. There's nothing miraculous about that. If you said, like, he raised a dead person, I'd be like, okay, that's a little more interesting. If you had testimony that he healed somebody who was, paralyzed, or something like that, I'd be like, okay, well, that's a little more interesting.
Okay, so on that, I actually have several things. So for one miracle would be a bunch of people in Zion's camp got cholera, right?
Yeah, I've heard
And
this story.
Joseph Smith went around healing them. And we
Sure.
have several journal accounts of people who were healed from cholera, right? And then there's another time he healed a woman's paralyzed arm. There was
Well, where do those reports like originate from?
These are firsthand journal accounts. In fact, I'm for context, I'm descended from a bunch of Mormon historical figures, and I grew up LDS, but then I left the church, became a Methodist, and then I actually recently came back to the LDS church.
Okay.
But I have lots of ancestors who have these experiences with Joseph Smith where, they firsthand report miracles of things like this. And then there's also the Kirtland Temple, where when they dedicated the temple, there were people who saw angels and spoke in tongues and did all this, charismatic type stuff.
Sure. I mean, I could talk to you about Catholics having Marian apparitions and different things like that with the same amount of testimony. And so, but you don't accept those.
I do.
Or do you?
Some
you
of
would?
them, yeah.
Some,
yeah,
okay.
I'm open to the idea that Marian apparitions are a thing, and
okay.
I I always say I have a broader view of God than most Latter-day Saints do, and that was this stems from me previously being a Methodist. So
sure.
Yeah, I'm open to miracles, and I think. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay,
so,
I think. Oh,
go ahead and finish your thought. I apologize.
So yeah, Trent Horn, I'm sure you've probably seen his podcast. He talks about miracles in other religions, and the way he rationalizes it is that he says God can extend his love to other people. Like, I don't see why a God couldn't, give people testimonies that bring him closer to him, if that makes any sense.
No,
right?
I understand that. I don't see miracles in other religions, really. I define them in Mormonism. I'm familiar with the reports that you're discussing. Yeah. I'm not. I like some of them, not all of them, not the Kirtland one. But the healings and the cholera and all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would just want to know more details. There's information out there. It's kind of there, but it's like, I don't know if you saw my video where I talk about the whole doubts criteria.
Yeah, I've seen that video.
I feel like it kind of falls on the the opinion's already established a little bit. Whereas like the resurrection, they're proclaiming. Now I understand that Mormons were not, they were pretty despised and were kind of chased around a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that. So I'm not trying to use a double standard, but I see it. I don't see these testimonies coming forward necessarily in that as much.
Right.
And there's just there's details that I would like to know that are more, because I can think of like reports from around the same era, like say Lourdes, France, where there's like medical documentation and all kinds of investigation, and these are more contemporary, that pass like a higher criteria. Even though I'm not Catholic, I'm more prone to accept those because there's actually the medical documentation. There's actually a lot of stuff that they were really like vigorously tested, and because they're more contemporary, we kind of would expect that a little bit more. Whereas in Mormonism, I see the claims and it makes me go, that's at least somewhat interesting, but I just wish I had more information in order for me to go, okay. And so because I don't have that, and then I have like false prophecies of Smith that didn't quite work out, and then I have this red flag, and then I don't see anything particularly miraculous about golden plates, and I don't mean to gish gallop here or just shotgun a bunch of arguments, but then I see the issue with the Book of Abraham, and like people having to like really do a lot of mental gymnastics to say that like he was really interpreting it and it wasn't really like him translating it, and it's really the Book of Breathings and it has absolutely nothing to do with Abraham. Then now I'm just overwhelmed with red flags. That's why I can't be LDS. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from. And oh man, I totally I forgot what I was gonna say. Sorry, I'm
that's all right.
blanking. This is
That's all
my
right.
first time ever coming on a live stream.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Let's-
This is like my 5th time ever doing one of these lives, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. So, in regards to the 3 witnesses, you know, they, or so I guess with like I think about Oliver Cowdery, right? He had, you know, many visions with Joseph Smith, and I to be honest, I kind of see a double standard, and this was something that caused me a little bit of cognitive dissonance when I was a Methodist, that when I have like Oliver Cowdery having these visions with Joseph Smith and then him leaving the church and not denying those visions, and a lot of the apologetic arguments I hear from traditional Christians is that, you know, the early apostles saw visions of Jesus, and that thus means that they it I guess that means that they are, I guess, credible, and that, you know, that's a reason for believing. If we're gonna, basically, apologists use eyewitness testimony as a reason for believing. Why is it that we can use the early apostles when we don't have like firsthand accounts, and yet we have like Cowdery, who left the church,
yeah,
and
well,
he subverts his beliefs. If
that's where we would just, me and you would come to a complete disagreement, because I think John is definitely written by the Apostle John, and there's actually very strong evidence for that. Matthew is a little harder to defend in terms of like it being Matthew. I'm not saying that there isn't evidence for it. I'm just saying there's not the internal evidence that there is in John. So with John, like, first of all the church fathers are agreed that it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? You have Origen, you have Tertullian, you have Irenaeus, and of course Irenaeus is just he was, according to he was a student of Polycarp, who according to him was a student of John. So you have all kinds of external stuff. You have every shred of manuscript evidence saying that he was the one, the traditional authors are the one who wrote it. We don't have anything going against that. And then in John, and here I'll recommend you a book, Nate, because even if you stay in Mormonism, I still think you should trust John as being written by John. Okay. Get Lydia McGrew's book, Eye of the Beholder. This book is obviously written by an eyewitness. Obviously, very obviously. There's all kinds of undesigned coincidences. There's external confirmations. Everything that we have in John's account is not just somebody who was written by somebody who was like close, like really, was truthful and historically like knowledgeable and different things like that. But the details that he gives are just way best explained by somebody who is an actual eyewitness. And you can actually, I'm making a video on this now. I have a script up for it, where through a process of elimination of just internally who is in the book, it's obviously John, the son of Zebedee. And so unfortunately I'm kind of running out of time because I'm running up on 3 hours here, and I probably need to close out the stream soon, but there's overwhelming evidence. She goes into a lot of it. You could even go to Jonathan McClatchy's website, jonathanmcclatchy.com, and just look up, I think it's like Tobias Singer. He responds to him on gospel authorship, and he goes through just like a taste of it, if you want to look that up. And so John is claiming to be an eyewitness, and he is an eyewitness. Okay. Like it's very strong. Okay. Matthew, like I said, it's a little harder because there's not all the internal clues that we see in John. And he's not even claiming to be an eyewitness in the book. But it's definitely built on eyewitness testimony. And it may have been like Matthew is the one who kind of compiled a lot of the sayings, and other people helped him edit it and all that other stuff. That's something my friend Stephen Boyce believes. Luke is very much like John, and it's overwhelmingly good evidence. And Luke was associated with the apostles. He was close to the apostles. We know that because he was present in Jerusalem in Acts chapter 21 with Paul when he was being imprisoned. And it says that all the elders were present. Well, he tells us who those elders are in Galatians 2. It's Peter, James, and John. And then I could go on and on. But anyways, there's tons of really good evidence for traditional authorship. I have videos on it. I've done live streams on it. You can see those. But yeah, those are witnesses. Those are eyewitnesses. And then on top of that, this is just my way of thinking, is in my own Christianity, there are like tons of miracles that pass a very high criteria that are that I don't see in Mormonism. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I'm talking about like people who have had paralyzed stomachs, who had gastroparesis, who were supposed to die by the time they were 20, that were being fed by a feeding machine, basically, that were able to get that removed, and they can eat on their own, things that are just medically impossible to explain, which I'm sure those things would be things that you're fine with. And so when I combine the New Testament evidence with the modern evidence, and then I see the red flags in Mormonism, why would I go with the guy who looks like he's reinventing the wheel? Or not reinventing the wheel. He's reshaping that wheel into something completely different, as far as I can tell. And so, yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I guess in my mind, it's like I just still don't see why, if with the Gospels, I mean, I'm agnostic personally on gospel authorship. I'm totally open to traditional authorship, but I don't see why, again, if eyewitness testimony is the basis of, or at least I guess I should say a facet of our belief, I don't see why the 3 and the 8 witnesses of the Book of Mormon are much different, right?
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying is, with the 3 of Moroni, I don't know what the appearances of Moroni were like. With the Gospels, I have multisensory appearances and reasons to believe, internally and externally, they were written by people who were knowledgeable, close up to the facts. And this is a whole other stream or whatever. Maybe you could join on that. But so I have that. I have that already. Like you're just not convinced of that yet. But I already have that. Whereas with the 3 witnesses, I don't know. And I don't find anything particularly miraculous in and of themselves about golden plates, especially when there's something sketchy about Smith's translation ability, given the Book of Abraham, and especially because of this prophecy issue, which looks sketchy. It looks like he's stealing something out of Muhammad's playbook. And so all I have is positive evidence for Christianity and a bunch of like negative evidence against Mormonism. Right. If you could give me details, like these are the appearances and this is what they were like, and they were multisensory and they are on the scale of something close to Jesus' resurrection, and there's something beyond just here's untranslated plates that only one guy conveniently is able to translate. I mean, at least with the Gospels, I have like 4 different versions of testimony. You know what I mean? So like I don't just have one guy's word for it. I have multiple people's word for it. I have Paul's words for it too. I have other people's words for it. I don't have that. I don't have any independent attestation really. I just have witnesses. Great. There's witnesses. I want to know. The devil is in the details, so to speak. Like I want to know why I should trust these witnesses. Anybody can make a claim and be mistaken, or they could be lying. It's very difficult to say that about the resurrection eyewitnesses.
Right. And so I guess I have kind of 2 points. So my first point would be with the details. There are some details that they do relate about their experience of the 3 witnesses of them seeing the plates. I would have to look specifically at what those specific details are.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah. I'd have to look at their accounts, but there are details that they give. Like they talk about flipping through the plates. They talk about the artifacts that were with the plates. Well,
again, artifacts are like
right.
Like as an artifact is an artifact. Like okay, for example, let me I could say like this is the axe head that Elisha caused to float. Right. Whoop-de-doo. But if I see the axe head float, that's a different thing. You know what I mean? And so like artifacts, smartifacts, like I need something that only God can do. So,
right. And I guess, oh man, sorry, I keep losing my train of thought.
No, that's all right, man. It's all right. Well, it's been long in the stream, and I'm coming up on 3 hours, so I probably got to wrap it up. So Nate, I want you to think about these things. Please look at that book that I recommended, Lydia McGrew, Eye of the Beholder, or you could even just pick an easier book. It's called Testimonies to the Truth. Testimonies to the Truth by Lydia McGrew. And she goes through arguments for the reliability of the Gospels. And just think about it this way. If the Gospels do go back to eyewitnesses, then something like the traditional authorship has to be true. And so they're not just making stuff up. So I hope that helps.
Right, yeah.
And thanks for coming up, bro. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks
Take
for all
care.
you
God
do.
bless you.
Thanks.
Yep.
See ya.
All right. All right, guys. I know there are a couple people waiting. I apologize. I'm just coming up on 3 hours and I need to get back to the fam. And so thank you guys so much for coming out and watching. I appreciate the super chats. I appreciate all the support and likes for the stream. And then, hey, I'll still be doing these. So if you didn't get your chance, come back next time. I appreciate it. One last super chat I'll get to, and then I'll close it out. William Stiegel. Hey, Testify. I'm going to get you an Astros hat. Oh my gosh. Listen, buddy. Listen, dude. The Astros, the trash can beaters, you mean? And so, no, I guess all those guys are gone now, except Altuve. So no, I that is one team I actually very much despise, even still. Maybe it's even irrational at this point. I like Yordan Alvarez, but yeah, no, I would never wear an Astros hat. I wouldn't wear. There are certain hats I would never wear. I wear a lot of MLB hats. Astros is one of them. I don't think I'd ever wear Cubs. I would never ever wear Cubs, obviously, from the Cardinals hat. But yeah, I like a lot of teams. I can't watch my beloved Cardinals very much anymore these days, and so. But Astros ain't it, buddy. Like, yeah, too much cheating going on there. They're too much like the Prophet Muhammad. So, all right, guys. So I appreciate you coming out. Thank you again, and we'll catch you on the next one. God bless.